Yeah, just bring us a couple more bottles. It'd be brilliant.
If you opened a second Devonshire, where would you do it? Somewhere totally different. E.g.
No, I think it's not going to happen because there won't be a second Devonshire. The Devonshire was invented to not be rolled out.
Got it.
So
Perfect.
It's not replicable.
Could you do it like literally just go wacko and just do it in Tokyo or Austin, Texas?
Of course you could, but I don't know if it would work because I don't know what people are like there, what they would do. Thanks, Chrissy.
I always thought Texas wouldn't be bad because it has a similar drinking culture.
Have we started?
No.
We'll just roll in, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's how I always do it.
I need a cup of tea.
Brilliant, yeah.
Do you want a cup of tea?
Actually, I'd love a cup of black English breakfast tea, nothing else.
Let's get double espresso, please. Thank you. No sugar.
This is wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chrissy. Yeah, no, I haven't thought about Tokyo or Japan. I did dream about New York, only that we were offered a site in New York very early on. We definitely said no, and we won't do it.
Why wouldn't you go to New York?
Well, because I want to be here.
Yeah.
And this is designed for us to sustain a reasonable income and have great fun.
Your fun
in one place.
In one goddamn place.
And you know, it's like that old story about, you know, the fisherman. The guy found the fisherman in the Caribbean, and he went down and said to him, "Why don't you get a bigger boat?" And he says, "Well, I wouldn't be able to fucking sit here and have fun, would I?"
No.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a longer story than that, but you know the one.
That's right. The guy says you get a bigger boat, and then you'll be able to employ some people.
And then you'll have more boats.
And then you'll have more boats.
Yeah.
And then, well, what then? And then you'll be able to sit back and take it easy.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm doing now.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
So
Yeah.
true.
It's absolutely brilliant thing. My wife, when she was young, was a sort of au pair to a French family of sort of Protestant wood merchants. And they went on holiday to Corsica, and they went out with a lobster fisherman. And this guy was driven insane by the fact that the lobster fisherman, I think, went out at night. Let me get this right. They went out at night and dropped the pots.
Yeah.
And then they came and collected them in the following morning. And this guy was going, but why don't you drop a second lot of pots?
When you take them in
when you take them in.
Yeah.
And of course, interestingly, one, you'd possibly risk overfishing. But secondly, the guy goes, I make a good living this way. Why would I fuck with everything?
Yeah. No, there's the whole thing of like expansion. You just create your own prison, don't you? Like scale kills magic. I think
that's actually really true. And also, you know, I think a lot of restaurateurs who've moved on to their 5th, 6th, 7th, 10th, 15th, they don't have the same kind of fun. They're spread too thinly. It becomes more codified and corporate. You can't have the chaos and the magic and the lovely wonder.
Yeah.
And you can't, the artistry can't be quite as real. And there's lots of things that start getting diluted.
So it looks much more professional to have an HR department than to hire your mates. But actually hiring your mates is possibly a better recruitment strategy than hiring people you like isn't actually a bad recruitment strategy.
My strategy on recruitment is to hire people who think like we think.
How did you find that out though?
Well, you know, there's lots of flags that you look for in somebody who's going to be really good at working in this industry. One of them is belief. You know, having a kind of a
thank you very much.
An honest belief that their life is about doing something.
Right.
And then you have to have somebody who's able to have relationships and maintain relationships and be a good communicator. And then you think about things like pride. If people have personal pride and their pride in things, then they tend to look better, deport themselves better, communicate better with people, have a bit more fun, and be a bit more confident. And we need all those things, you know. So I'm always looking out for those things rather than skills.
Isn't like hospitality over here though is often seen as like a step job to something else?
Well, firstly, I've banned the word hospitality. We don't use that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it needs a rebrand, doesn't it? Yeah.
Well, no, it's been completely hijacked by corporates who use it to pigeonhole a load of industries that aren't necessarily hospitable at all. We're in the looking after people business.
Yes.
And that's what we do. And we need to look after our team before we look after our guests, because if we don't do that, then they can't look after the guests.
Yes.
So that's the way we look at it.
But we can look at this, if you don't want to expand, nonetheless you have created a template for the reinvention of the British pub, which
That's very kind of you.
no. In fact, well, emphatically, and I think that's actually an area of such social importance that I've actually proposed that there shouldn't be VAT on pubs. My argument is very simple. You don't put VAT on a leisure centre because it's considered a social asset.
Yeah.
Right? Equally, any space in which people can fundamentally, because a pub is actually a cooperative venture that every time you go to a pub, you're funding.
Church, isn't it? That's why.
And you're also, well, actually, interestingly, you probably don't tax churches, do you? So why should you tax pubs? Okay. But actually, every time you spend money in a pub, you're actually funding a space that can be enjoyed by other people at other times. So it's a form of collaborative consumption, right? Spending money in a pub. True of a restaurant as well. But, I mean, there are weird things about British pubs I don't understand. I mean, one of them is, why don't they sell milk, right? Because they're open till 11 o'clock, okay? Yeah. If it's a choice, do you want to go to the corner shop or do you want to go to the pub to buy a pint of milk? I'll go to the pub. And once I walk into a pub, I'm going to have a pint, right?
Well,
that's how my brain works.
You know, the co-op should start setting up pubs.
Well, you could have a little pod system. I mean, a few pub chains have experimented with Amazon lockers, okay?
Really?
They're usually in the car park.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're obviously experimenting with electric car charging because it's another way of getting footfall. Because I basically argue with a pub that it's a footfall problem on the grounds that once people go in, they're going to spend some money.
Well, I'd actually disagree with that.
Okay, go on.
I think the reason that people don't go into a lot of pubs is because they don't feel like they're getting looked after when they're there.
I see what you mean.
They also think that the actual price they're paying for what they're getting is not worth the value for their leisure time that they have invested.
Got it.
And I think that's what the industry needs to concentrate on. Of course, it'd be brilliant if we didn't have to pay VAT.
Yeah.
Of course, and I think that's it would be a great thing for the industry and would kickstart it all. But I think that our industry needs to look at caring for people's value for time when they come in and they spend their cash with us. And I think there's many occasions where people will walk into a pub, they won't get served beautifully, it won't be as clean as it should be, the beer might not be quite up to scratch, but it's still £8.50. That is a pointless exercise for them.
I think one of the best things you've ever taught me, Osh, was that whole thing of value for time versus value for money.
Yeah.
And I think I'd love to explore this with you, Rory, because I think the whole point of today is almost like publicans are behavioural scientists who like a fucking pint and having a lovely time. You're essentially studying bullshitters, yeah. I think a lot of behavioural science is bullshit as well in some sense.
No, there's a great measure. There's a great measure which nobody actually uses consciously, but it's quite revealing, which is sometimes called cost per entertainment hour. And some people have used it to explain, first of all, why do skint 18-year-olds spend 85 quid on a computer game? Well, the reason is because they play it for about 200 hours. Yeah. So in terms of cost per hour of entertainment, it's actually very low.
Yeah.
One of the things that absolutely horrifies me is middle-class people getting sniffy about working-class people having big televisions, right? Because television, in terms of cost per entertainment hour, is absolutely tiny.
Yeah.
Okay? Cinema's quite high, cost per entertainment hour. You're paying, by the time you've gone, it's 30 quid for 2 hours or something like that. So it's quite a useful measure because it often explains, and you could argue that pubs are somewhere in the middle, I guess.
I'd say they're at
the high end.
They're at the high end, aren't they? Really, when you think about it. Yeah. By the time you actually travel there and you have your 3 pints and your Scotch egg, and it's 30 quid or 40 quid. I think for a couple of hours that's a huge investment for a normal person. It really is.
Yeah.
And
right.
I think when they're making that investment, you need to make sure that the experience is way more than the beautiful pint and the really quality Scotch.
How do you do that here then? In terms of the value for time, value for money?
I think people need to feel something.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing when you talk about people feeling something is that you think about the inputs. What makes them feel?
Yeah.
And we try and break that down into the 5 senses. Obviously what they see,
yes,
what they smell, what they taste, what they hear, and what they touch. And there's on each of those you can take each sense and have a myriad of different things that don't seem important on their own. But when you look at all of them, then you create this thing that feels great.
Yes.
And that's really what we've tried to do.
that Charles Spence, I think you've told me about Charles Spence, Rory. You know, the guy who does the Bubba and Kiki, the two different...
Yes.
Like Bubba, basically if you...
Booba. and Kiki.
So basically chocolate, when it's in a circular shape, tastes sweeter. So when Cadbury's changed their bar in 2016 from that long, like rectangular bar, they made exact same chocolate, but they did that sort of bubbly shape. Yeah. Everyone kicked off because they're like, it's too fucking sweet. Exact same thing, but his whole thing is all the different sensory, how you use the five senses in marketing.
And I have no doubt whatsoever that if you're treated unkindly and you feel that the place might be a bit unpleasant, or you feel that it's got an attitude, or it's a little dirty, or the music's too loud, or it smells, or something like that, if you get the best plate of food that's ever been made, it won't taste good. I can tell you that's for certain.
Well, I always give the example of that, by the way, about how contextual enjoyment is, which is if I served you an absolutely magnificent meal, but one of the prongs of your fork was out of alignment, you couldn't enjoy the meal.
Yeah.
End of.
So true.
Right?
That's what I call a silent irritant.
Yeah, lovely.
Because it's not something that you're going to call the waiter over and go, excuse me, you're going to put up with it, but it still devalues your enjoyment. And what we try to do is to annihilate those silent irritants. So if you look in the restaurant, for example, all of the tables have 3 points on the floor. So 3 legs.
They will never wobble.
So they can't wobble. So that irritant of that this happens to everybody
so
when you go into a restaurant.
That one has 4, actually.
Yeah, well, this is okay. It doesn't wobble because it's on a carpet. So that's the trick.
Okay, fair enough.
Rory, what would you say the silent irritants are in like a completely different category?
They're very often, I mean, that's really interesting. I think one of the criticisms I'd make of marketing is it spends a lot of time trying to amplify the positives rather than remove the negatives.
Yeah.
And the negatives are interesting because they're often experienced and felt, but not really spoken. You don't really capture them in market research. Yeah. No one would say, I was going to have a meal, but the table was wobbly, so I didn't.
Or the light was too bright.
You've got an example.
Or I smelled something that I didn't know what it was.
By the way, in this category, one thing as a 59-year-old is menus you can't fucking read.
There's a perfect example.
When you see people with their mobile phone shining a torch onto the menu.
Even worse, menus you can't understand.
Yeah.
You know, words, chefs are always putting words on there. I eat out every day and I still find words that I don't know that I've got to look, fucking hell, it's lettuce.
Why is that a status? Is that a status thing, do you reckon? A status thing of the chefs to sort of say, like, I'm not better than you, but we're using ingredients. Why do people do that?
I'll give you a silent irritant, okay? Calls may be recorded for quality control purposes, okay? Yeah, so particularly if you get cut off and you have to listen to the whole spiel all over again. What I'd like the government to do is literally to email everybody and just say, you now understand that all calls may be recorded for quality control purposes. Tick this box and accept it. And literally you will get 2 hours of your life back. Yeah. Okay. Unidentified object in the bagging area, by the way.
Oh, God.
Which also, because it's spoken out loud, this is a classic case. It's not just annoying, it's mildly humiliating. Because it's broadcasting to other people in the checkout, this fucker doesn't know what he's doing, okay? Some things are really interesting in terms of silent irritants, which is something...
Can I give you a great one?
Go on, please.
That you see everywhere, is we take no responsibility for your stuff getting stolen.
Thank you.
That's so true.
Basically, fuck you, we're not going to look after your bag. And also, if it does get nicked, don't come to us about it. Because, by the way, it happens here all the time. So obviously not here, but that's what the sign actually says if you think about it.
Basically, do not enjoy your evening. Spend it in a state of mild anxiety. Okay. I mean,
clutching your bag.
There's a brilliant one which is... and by the way, I by and large venerate Marks and Spencer's. I think they're extremely good. Okay, but Marks and Spencer's in Sevenoaks, in the elevator, in the lift from the car park, says if you've got a problem, i.e., being fined in what is effectively their car park, don't come to us. I can't remember the exact word, but it says you must contact the car park operator directly or whatever. And I kind of go, look, actually, this is your problem. Okay, I won't go into the details about why people get fined unfairly, but it's all to do with number plate recognition and bullshit like that. But no, I mean, really weird silent irritants, which literally nobody knows about, is that a large part of the irritation and stress of being in a queue is the people behind you.
Yeah.
And it's the feeling that there are people behind you sort of watching you and judging you. So one of the things McDonald's discovered is they discovered that the longer the queue was, the more people sort of fucked up their order. And you go, well, if you've been waiting for 6 minutes in a queue, you should be word perfect by the time you get to the front of the queue. What it turns out, and I only discovered this by accident before I researched it, and the reason was I used to board the Eurostar at Ebbsfleet. And I noticed that if you went through security and you were the last person going through, it was a completely unstressful experience. Whereas the feeling that other people were going, oh, that dickhead's forgotten to take his belt off or whatever it is, that was what made it stressful in part.
It's really interesting.
No one would consciously ever say that. What I hate about a queue is the people behind me.
No, because it's while it's in your mind.
It's in your mind. It's felt, not thought.
You don't want to elucidate it, and therefore it's silent. It becomes silent. And we have to look out for these things all of the time.
I love your example of
like,
we do not take responsibility.
Yeah.
You know what you were saying earlier, Raw, about how a lot of people amplify the positives in marketing but don't think about the negatives.
Yeah.
So you say that basically Amazon Prime is basically just removing the negatives.
Yeah,
everything, all the silent irritants.
Amazon has been pretty astute at removing negatives. Yeah,
this is like the Amazon primification of pulling Guinness. Like it just fucking goes out like that. It's like that. The speed of service here is mad.
Well, I've always felt that
What's
people.
the art of that?
Well, there's two sides to it. One, it's really annoying when you're waiting at a bar and somebody is slowly pouring 1 pint at a time.
Yeah.
When you know that they can pour 4, or that the beer can be sped up. But secondly, it's a commercial bit. You know, if you can't be good when you're busy, then you're less likely to ever be busy. Because when you're busy, it's the time that people are at the maximum point of enjoying what you're doing. So to be really good when you're busy is the absolute key. This thing where you go into like a stadium bar at halftime and you've got to wait 10 minutes to get a pint, which means you've only got 3 at the end before the game kicks off again. Why?
Yes.
Why can't they just have the beer ready? Why can't you prepare and pay for it? Why can't you there's ways of doing it. And we've worked out a way of doing it here that nobody ever waits. And
what is that system?
Do you produce beer in advance of it being
No,
on?
we don't. We never do. That's very important that we don't.
Say that again, sorry. The
batch processing.
Yeah.
So you could pour a Guinness now in anticipation that someone's going to request.
No, that's one thing we don't do.
Okay.
What we have done is put extra taps in. They're faster taps, and when somebody orders, it gets filled immediately. The money's taken by somebody else, and the next person is done. So we can do multiple orders at the same time rather than doing one at a time.
Here's a silent irritant, by the way. Coffee shops, which is, I know why they do it. They don't actually charge you until the end, okay? But as a result, while they're making their coffee, I'm standing around with my phone in my hand like a dickhead.
Yeah.
And actually, what I want to do is pay, scan the loyalty card, put my phone away, wait for the coffee.
Yeah.
But instead, because they have, and I'm sure there's a reason for the policy, because they have this policy of people don't like being charged until they've got their coffee. But I actually I think that's actually changed. I think with cash, it might have worked that way.
Yeah.
I think when you're paying by phone, something different happens.
Well, I don't know whether it's an Irish
I'm
thing.
intrigued by the fact that someone else takes the money.
Yeah. Well, it just works easier because you got one person doing that one job, taking the money, making sure.
So it's Henry Ford. This is Henry Ford.
It is.
It's
a marginal gains always.
Fantastic.
When you do things like that.
I love this.
Theatre of the guy was when I was here last time. There's like a theatre to it because you've got the system behind the scenes, and then he's like, and then you feel like you're getting looked after because it's like, I know you two have got 2 there, bang, it comes through. There's like an element to it.
There's another really important part to that. It does get very busy, and sometimes people might have to wait 2 minutes for their order to be done. But if they're all standing there, and the guy who's actually taking the orders goes, you're going to be next, you're going to be next, and you're going to be next.
They're totally fine.
Then it's fine.
Because fear of being unseen.
Yes.
That's upsetting.
But how many times you go into a pub and you feel unseen because they're really busy just serving one at a time.
You need to found a company called Devonshire Consultants. Literally, $1,000 an hour, charge $1,000 an hour for advice to any service industry on this kind of stuff.
Well, I don't know.
Because so much of it, you see, I think is felt, not thought.
Yeah.
and therefore unspoken.
Yeah.
And the value you can create there is astonishing. But that business of, I mean, interestingly, one thing I'll give the Americans huge credit for is they're good when they're busy, aren't they?
Well, I think you have to be. If you're going to be successful
Yeah.
in any kind of retail, you've got to be good when you're busy.
Because in the UK, I tend to have an aversion to anything crowded because I go, it's
Absolutely.
going to be shit.
It is.
Interestingly, in the US, you know, there might be a crowded sports bar, something like that, or you go to a baseball game,
Yeah.
and they're entirely geared up to cope with that kind of volume
Absolutely,
and processing.
and you should
Yeah.
be. Another thing that happens as well in a really busy West End pub, you get there, it's crazy busy, you wait ages, and you pay for your pint of Camden Hells, and it comes in a plastic cup.
Oh my god.
And you go, I'm really sorry, can I have another glass? They go, we haven't got any at the moment. Why is that? It's because we're busy, mate. That is not an excuse. I think that needs to be taken away.
You know what's absolutely mental, mate? London is literally the greatest foodie city in the world with so many absolutely banging, delish restaurants opening on the reg. I absolutely love it. But look, let's get real. There's lots of times where tables are still sat empty, when your favourite spot is silently struggling. And look, every single table counts. Everyone needs solutions, and they need solutions very fast. And that, my friends, is where Eat Club comes in. Eat Club is a profitability tool created by hospitality insiders, including the absolute Don, Marco Pierre White. Eat Club gives top bars and restaurants control of a new stream of quality paying customers to fill those quiet times. No faff, no upfront costs, only upside. Look, if you're in hospitality and you want bums on seats when you need them most, please drop the founder Pan or the VP of the UK Liz, both absolute legends. Drop them an email, fillmytables@eatclub.co.uk, fillmytables@eatclub.co.uk. That will get you straight through to them and they can help. Please, let's turn those empty tables into profit. Psychophysics, the thing you talk about. When you actually put something in it that's not in its right glass, change the taste of it.
Yeah, it would do.
I know you've talked a lot about Will Guidara's reverse benchmarking, because I think that applies across, again, from into a gazillion different industries. But his other thing, which I sort of reread the book in prep for this, there's just so many little nuggets that you can pull. The other thing, perception is reality. I think that's a massive kind of principle of marketing. The nuance he says, which is delicious in the book, is their perception, i.e. the customer's perception of that specific table, is your reality. How do you think about that? Because ultimately each table is essentially a different context. You may have a couple on a date, you may have a private dining room, you may have someone who's fucking miserable.
Yeah. Well, by the way, there's something unique about a pub, distinct from most cafes and nearly all restaurants, which is if you look at the variety of seating here.
Yeah.
Okay. I could go over there with a laptop and be on my own.
Yeah.
I could go into that corner and have a romantic evening.
Yeah.
Okay. I could sit on that sofa with a few friends perfectly happily.
Yeah. Yes.
So effectively, the ability to choose your seating appropriate to your mood and circumstance.
We call this lovely chaos.
Perfect.
Because without this chaos, then it seems ordered and everything is symmetrical and it's codified and it's not fun. And restaurants tend to do that.
Yeah.
And pubs kind of tend to do it a little bit, but if you completely ignore it and make sure you have places where people can hide and places where people can be on their own and places where people can be in a group and places where people can have a raucous time and places where people can have a quiet time.
So train
all
design.
of those things, and you put it into the design, and you make sure that there are places that you can actually not be seen, and places that you can be seen as well. So you have a kind of different layers of experience. There's all different things you
and
can
actually, for example, you don't mind a place being crowded if there's somewhere you can lean.
do. Exactly.
Okay. So one of the things where train designers could learn from pubs is that normally you have uniform seating in a train, which is becoming increasingly bus or aircraft like. Now, one of the luxuries trains have, which actually other forms of transport don't, and there is, I think, a sort of Deutsche Bahn experimental lab that looks at this, is you could, the only exception I know, the Arlanda Airport Express, part of the seating is stools where you look straight out of the window and you have a little shelf, okay, where
Like
you
a
can put a
bar
laptop, okay?
Yeah.
It's an absolute joy riding on that thing, because every time I go on the Arlanda Express, which isn't that often, I don't go to Stockholm that frequently, but you can sit looking at the view, okay? You take up less space and you're happier. I mean, it's a fantastic whip.
I totally agree, and I love the Eurostar for that, and also the TGVs in France, because even when I have a seat, I go straight to the bar restaurant.
The bar where they've got stools.
Where
and
they've got stools, and you can lean against the window, and you can wander around, and you might bump into somebody, and you can talk to the person behind the counter.
As soon as you lean, you feel at home, don't you? There's a sort of weird comfort that you get from leaning versus the standing.
No. One of the things you could do is you could create, literally on trains, you could create more standing areas, but with leaning places.
Yeah, so
and people would actually be pretty happy.
Yeah.
I asked this question actually, what is it that people hate about standing? And it isn't simply standing, because there are people who choose to stand on trains where there are loads of seats available. What it probably is partly feeling out of balance. It might be feeling that your bag might be nicked.
And also having 360 around, so you're being watched from all sides.
Of course.
And I think that's what you don't want.
So this psychology, by the way, I mean, a large part of it explains why Apple Vision Pro will never succeed. Because would you ever sit in a public space wearing goggles? I'd be convinced someone's going to stab me, basically.
Well, I've been surprised by lots of things that have happened in technology, but I can't see that. I do agree.
Yeah. And it's one of those things.
Their perception is your reality. How do you think about that with people coming in?
Well, I think it, to me, to be honest with you, I love Will Goddard and he's correct, but it's so bloody dead obvious, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because what we're trying to do, if you go to the actual core of what we're trying to do, we're trying to make people feel comfortable, safe, happy, welcome, well looked after. That's their perception. We have to give them that perception. Mm-hmm. And we have to understand that when that perception is not received by them, then we have failed. So
sink into that a bit deeper, because that's what I'm trying to get into, because I understand the macro principle, but when their perception's off of the reality you're trying to create, that experience. The other thing I think you said, which is, we're a retail business, but people go away with not a physical product, a shareable story.
Yeah. Well,
how do you get, if that's not working, what's going on there?
Well, just to clarify that one, I have said it loads of times. Other retailers, whether it's Tesco or Levi's or Burberry or wherever it is, you decide what you want. You go in, you have a lovely time talking to the person who sells it to you. You buy the pair of jeans for £100 or the shopping for £50, and you have a physical kind of bag, token with you as to what it was you brought, and that is the thing you bought. Mm-hmm. But when you come to a pub or a restaurant or a coffee shop, what you've bought is the pleasure of consuming what they gave you in the place, and you actually leave with nothing tangible.
Unless you nick a glass.
Well, there you are. That happens.
Actually, that's an interesting question, which is, I always think that hotels should bring back those stickers that you put on your luggage. Yeah. So you have a small amount of tangible proof of the experience. So a little bit of branded merch from a pub, something to take away that costs nothing.
Well,
old suitcases always have Shepherd's Hotel Cairo or whatever stuck all over them.
Well, that's why we put the beer mats out. People take them all the time.
People take them all the time.
And they
Brilliant.
show up again on the
excellent.
internet. We just ordered another 40,000 beer mats, which will last us about 2 months.
2 months. 2 months for 40,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, they do have a shelf life from being on the table anyway.
There's a few over there, mate.
Okay. No. You see that? So oddly, little symbolic keepsakes are actually probably quite useful.
And to be honest with you, you said you might nick a glass.
I did not. I said unless you nick a glass. Yeah.
We go through 900 Guinness glasses per month. So,
gone.
Yeah, gone, disappeared, and we don't break that many.
No.
Wow.
Interesting.
That's mad. I read somewhere that the Beavertown, I think the Beavertown marketing director was talking about how we actually want you to nick the glass because it builds the brand presence. Yeah. Like it when you're at home. Because I've got a Beaver glass down at home. I'll only have water out.
A Beaver glass down.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. And they're like,
This is purely anecdotal, okay? And so do not take this as gospel, but I heard a rumour that Tommy Hilfiger slightly encouraged a moderate degree of shoplifting. And the reason was that the people who stole the clothes were cooler than the people who bought them.
That's brilliant. That is brilliant.
Anyway, brilliant. I'll leave that. I'll leave that as purely a piece of anecdote.
Yeah. So sorry. So their perception is your reality. When it's not clicking, talk to me about that. Because I think.
Well, you're losing.
But how do you solve that? Because I think there's a lot of people listening to this who've got amazing restaurants. Yeah. You can't. It's one of those things you don't know. Sometimes you don't know why you're doing something so well. It seems like it comes naturally to you.
Well, I think that there's a few things you need to do. I think as an owner of a looking after people type business, and it's hard, and you have to really try to do it, is you genuinely have to put yourself in customer's point of view. Use the eyes of the customer.
Yeah.
So when you come into the business, you look at it from the outside as if you've never seen it before. You look at the tables as if you've never seen them before. You look at the service as if you've never seen them before. Because if you don't, then you know you've seen it before, and you miss all the bits. You see it from internal. I call it the internal four walls thing. You're used to it, and therefore that's fine. But what you have to do is continuously challenge how everything is. How are the tables set up? How is the flow of people? How is the lighting?
Yeah.
How are the staff sort of holding themselves? Is the beer going out right? Is everything the right temperature? It's constant looking at the tiny, tiny details. And if you don't get all the tiny, if you're not on the tiny details, then it all falls apart and falls apart really, really quickly.
Yeah.
So we are always looking at margin gains on the tiny things.
So let's make a generalization here, I think, which is that I think it's safe to say that all organizations overinvest in customer acquisition and underinvest in customer experience.
And retention.
And retention.
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons, I think. One of them is that a lot of the activities that make for experience and retention, you don't get bollocked for not doing them. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Wait, so what do you mean by that?
Okay, so if you fail... First of all, I feel sorry for anybody in the inverted commas hospitality industry because, let's face it, marketing is always the thing you can put off till tomorrow. You have a load of fires to fight right here and now, and marketing comes into that category of things that are important, but which you can always... It's the equivalent of that email, which you know is important, but you can always click snooze for one more day. Then you have things which are very measurable, and, generally in a business, customer acquisition is very measurable, and therefore it's very easy to justify the expenditure, albeit often using fairly fatuous metrics. Whereas customer lifetime value, if you like, or relational value, as opposed to transactional value, is slow to measure and it's hard to prove. And also, as you said, involves often doing things which are difficult. They're not expensive necessarily, but they're difficult to do and require acts of imagination to do it well, I think.
Yeah, active imagination and time investment.
Yeah.
Because you've actually got to be there to make those customer moments better. And I quite often get asked, what's the best way of marketing a pub? I'll tell you what it is you buy someone a pint. But to actually go out there and buy, 10 people a pint, it takes an hour because you've got to say, great to see you, how are you? What are you having? Have you tried this? There you go. And by the way, and the impact of that, by the way, it only costs...
Ocado found that giving people a tea towel was just insane in terms of... Because the great thing with Ocado is you can measure the effect of an act of kindness on future relational sales. But
the impact has a pub landlord bought you a pint recently?
Funnily enough, no, but someone at the wonderful, I'll plug them here, Eton Mess coffee shop just outside Sevenoaks brought me back some specialty coffee and gave me a bag.
You've just proved the point I was trying to make.
Yeah.
You do that to someone, they tell everybody.
Yeah.
And they go and they tell their friends and they say, that's a good place, because that happened. And pubs are about relationships. And you have a relationship with the pub in the same way as you have a relationship with a friend when you get it right. You will, when you get it right and you create that kind of advocacy that turns someone into a regular, their value is way bigger.
The Angel Hotel in Abergavenny also gave me soda bread to take away.
There you go, another brilliant place. But
isn't it fantastic? Yeah. Absolutely joyous. Yeah.
Good bread.
What's so good about it?
By the way, soda bread. Well, it was Sunday Times Food Pub of the Year, so they don't need me to recommend it. I think Foodie Pub of the Year.
They certainly won't complain.
First of all, okay, this is a bit of a joke, but it's true. I always recommend English people go on holiday in Wales, okay? And the reason is that all English people think that Wales is a bit shit, and it isn't.
Yeah.
So when you go to Wales as an English person, it's full of pleasant surprises.
Always.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just Welsh people are just nicer. Celtic fringe people are just a bit nicer.
So it naturally under-promises and over-delivers.
Exactly
Which is exactly what we always try and do.
Exactly what you try, yeah. Now, so what's really interesting, I was talking to Will Gadara about this, and he said that companies have these things called loyalty programs, but they're not. They're transactional. If you do this, we will give you that. And the whole point of real loyalty is it's the discretionary act of generosity.
And an unexpected.
Yeah,
which is the real killer.
Paul Graham's got that thing, which is do things that don't scale, i.e., which is the way you build like sticky businesses. Paul Graham did it. He invested in what did he do? He did Dropbox. He's like Silicon Valley tech guy, but even in those businesses, again, this is back to that cross category. What can pubs teach us about other businesses? He goes, it's hand-to-hand combat to get those first die-hard evangelist fans, and then they become so loyal to the business that they tell everyone. And it's the same thing as you. It's like the best marketing is walking around here and buying 5 people a pint. It may take an hour, but that depth and that connection, that stickiness, is just, it builds that burning furnace of die-hard fans.
It should be possible as a really good waiter, bar person, or indeed telephone call centre operative, right, to earn 6 figures. I know that's going to play havoc with your business model.
Not at all. We have some.
You have some.
Yeah.
Right. Let me explain the logic behind this, which is I think there's a company called something like Category Pirates, and they talk about a thing called a brand quake, which is a single...
Brand quake.
A brand quake is a single experience which just has a completely disproportionate effect on your attitude going forwards towards whatever that entity is. I'll give you a very strange
I
example
love
of
the
this.
way they've come up with a new word for it rather than saying just a really successful thing we did.
I suppose the useful thing is by giving it a name. So my weird experience is, so 2 stories about this which are relevant. One of which is Alex Batchelor, wonderful guy who used to be the marketing director of Royal Mail. They did lots of advertising and marketing communication. They could never really make sense of what determined Royal Mail's brand perception until they had an idea and they researched it and discovered that the vast majority of anybody's attitude to Royal Mail was effectively driven by whether they liked their postman or postee.
Brilliant.
Technically, I'll be gender neutral.
Yeah.
If you liked your post person, you basically thought Royal Mail was great. The human, the person to person, fundamentally trumps anything else in terms of a brand perception. It could be on the telephone, okay? Now, I'll give you a second example. I think Southern Water is a brilliant company.
Go on.
Okay. I know absolutely nothing about them. I don't read about their financials in the Financial Times, okay? All that happened was my wife was walking through Deal, and suddenly there was this huge fountain of water coming out of the street.
Right.
So she rings me and she says, look, I'm actually walking, but can you go and report this massive water leak on the corner of so-and-so and so-and-so? I'm at home, go online, find the Southern Water emergency number. It's a Sunday. Somebody answers. They're actually Northern, oddly. So maybe if you ring Northern Water, you get someone from Cheltenham. I don't know. But she was just absolutely charming and brilliant and really, really efficient. She said, well, actually, you're the second person to report this. Don't worry, it's an emergency. We'll have someone there in 2 hours. And then thanked me for letting them know in just a way that was just extraordinarily engaging and charming. Okay. Now, literally 98% of my, I am a customer because I've got a little flat in Deal. 98% of my brand perception of that thing has been driven by that phone call.
Yeah.
And consequently, it's also true of, car dealerships, estate agents, everything else. I mean, actually taking your philosophy to the property industry would be fascinating.
How so?
But one interesting thing, if you talk to people who know the psychology of house buying, is the weird emotional shit plays an extraordinarily high part in what happens. So one of the reasons I think estate agents try and keep buyers and sellers away from each other as long as they can is that if the seller doesn't like the buyer or the buyer doesn't like the seller,
It's not happening.
it's not happening.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's totally irrelevant, right? The person is moving out. You should not care at all who it is who's selling your house.
I would say, of course, you should care, because that's going to affect exactly what you think of the property forever.
Forever.
Because
You're
you'll
right.
always
You're absolutely
remember
right.
the people who were there before and what they were. And if they were horrid, then you just don't want to live. It seems obvious.
I'll give you an
to me.
example. My parents-in-law are fanatical gardeners, and if anybody wants to buy their house, just mug up on gardening for about 6 months and go in and name the plants with their Latin names. You'll get it at 200,000 off.
Yeah.
If you came along and said, "Oh, we can put a helipad over there," right? And I'm thinking of
would
having a
make great.
karting track, right? They won't sell to you at any price.
No.
Okay.
No.
Well,
It's not really.
You're right. You're right, because how you...
Maybe we are all.
You've created a
Well, no, so
garden
my
which is
parents'
a
house.
legacy. Okay, your garden is to some extent a legacy.
Yeah.
And therefore, effectively, you're pissing on someone's life, an achievement of their life. If you move into a house and basically... I sold a flat in London, fatally, in about 1994, and we'd only had a kitchen put in 2 months later, a year earlier, with a slab of fantastic Canadian maple as on the counter. The people who moved in, who are passionate environmentalists, immediately trashed the whole kitchen when it was about 6 months old, and the bit of maple got thrown out. I still haven't forgiven them for it. I still resent this. That's none of my business. It's not my apartment anymore. I still find that painful.
It's so my parents, I told them my parents moving house. They're in Bookham. Not near miles from you. They were looking and looking and looking and looking. And they found this place. Anyway, long story longer, it found out that it was the guy who works for my dad. It was his stepdaughter who was it was their house originally. It was a little shitty shed that they developed into this nice house. As soon as mum found that out, she was like, it's meant to be. There's a cosmic intervention.
Yep.
And like even to this day, she's like, oh my, and it's so true. She's like, oh my God, this is how they've done it. She's going all
And then
crazy
you
about it.
justify all sorts of stuff that you wouldn't know.
Yes.
No, you can keep the fridge.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Founders, cash is literally king. If you don't have cash in your business, you are going bust, mate. Imagine you've landed a banging retailer or you've got a brand new bit of MPD going live. Suppliers need paying today, but the cash won't hit your bank account for 3 months. It's a headache wrapped in a nightmare, and that's why I'm delighted to announce we are partnering with Mimo, short for money in, money out. Mimo automates your finances, streamlines workflows, and keeps your books up to date. But the real hero here, the absolute Don, is Mimo Flex, flexible working capital built into your finance workflow. With Mimo Flex, you can draw what you need when you need it and repay as receivables land. Use it to keep inventory moving, fund campaigns, or negotiate better supplier terms. You could apply for a revolving line of up to 1 million and you only pay month to month on what you've actually used. It's insane. Credit subject to eligibility and status, fees and terms do apply. Listen, your favourite challenger brands literally love Mimo. Surreal, Hunter and Gatherer, Nice Wine, Better Nature Tempeh, and tons more. Learn more and apply at mimohq.com. The one thing I'd love to explore, but again, put it to pubs, is I know you write about in your book, Raw, about 10 times 1 is not the same as 1 times 10.
No.
How would you apply that to pubs? I mean, the obvious one is like having 10 pints, 1 pint 10 times over 10 days is not the same as one night having 10. And getting absolutely sloshed. But like, I think
you talk about 10 points. I just want to make a point here about our type of marketing and what we do.
Yeah.
Pubs are great if you get them going because people have 3, 4, 5, 6 pints. They genuinely do.
Yeah.
You open a burger place that does the best burger you've ever had, and you go and you taste it, and it's absolutely insanely beautiful. It's the best burger you've ever wanted, and it's completely delicious, and you're going to tell everyone about it. You might have a second, but you're definitely not having a third or a fourth.
Well, I do get 2 at Shake Shack.
Where if you have a pint of Budvar or a pint of Timothy Taylor or a pint of Guinness, and you think it's really great, and you've genuinely only come in for 1, the number of people who stay for 5 or say, I can't fucking believe I'm still here, like 4 hours later, is extraordinary. And that is something that pubs can really do, and I can't think of any other.
The cheeky pint is sometimes called a cheeky pint because, of course, it's never a pint.
Yeah. I mean, if you ask someone if you're going for a pint, that definitely means you're having 2.
2, yeah.
And if you're going for a few pints, that means you're definitely having 5. So it's and you think about that as well as actual the consumption, but also the investment in time.
Yeah.
You're there for 2 hours.
There's that's a
big thing.
James Dean quote, I think it is, which is 1 pint's perfect, 2's too many, 3's not enough. Yeah. And it's like as soon as you get to your 3rd, you're like, let's fucking send it. And that's basically what it is. I think think it's about cocktails though. I don't think it's about pints. Oh, that's so interesting. So then that is the I suppose the hardest bit then is getting the person in for the cheeky pint. So once they're in, it's game set match. Pass me the oranges. Just stay.
You say that, but in most pubs, I can't do pubs you go into. for one pint, you can't wait to get out. You know, and that's the problem with pubs, actually.
What are
I'll
some
be
of the
honest.
pubs that you really revere in terms of like just who kind of echo your principles?
I come from a Dublin culture.
Right.
I was actually in Dublin a couple of months ago,
Right.
with Charlie and Ash, and you know, just that feeling of homeliness, that feeling of belonging,
Yes.
that feeling of timelessness that you get in some of those old pubs in central London, in central Dublin,
Yeah.
is just beyond, and that comes from culture, and it comes from knowing what they're doing, and a sense of looking after that timeless arc of what they are. And there are a good few in London too. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to be negative about pubs in general, but a lot of pubs that are run by chains don't have that, and they don't look after it as well as they should. There are great exceptions, like my favourite pub where we've had a pint before, Norman's Coach and Horses.
Yeah.
Ali there really looks after that in terms of it feeling like it should. You know, making places feel like they should is
On that
is an
note,
art.
so I know we've talked about gratuitous perversity, so sort of doing random things that don't really make sense. The French house only do half pints.
Yeah.
What's the thinking with that? Have you been to the French house?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I used to work in Soho Square. Yeah.
Like what's there? Is there like a? Is there
I love the French house, and I love Leslie. Of course, the French house goes back a really long way. It used to be called the York Minster.
Yeah.
And it became the French house after World War II, because it had the association with the French resistance, and de Gaulle actually had meetings upstairs and all sorts of.
Yes.
The
Got it.
history is absolutely fabulous, but the Berlamo family ran it, and Gaston was still there up until about 25 years ago, 30 years ago.
Got it.
After the war,
the Berlamo family.
that was the landlords who lived
Oh, sorry,
upstairs.
okay.
So they were French, were they?
They were French, yes.
Yeah.
I believe they may have been Belgian, but I'm pretty sure
Got
they were
it.
French. And then they passed on to Leslie, follow Leslie over there.
Yeah.
She's wonderful. She's been there for 31 years, I believe.
Amazing.
But the reason why they do halves is because when the demobbed English soldiers came back after the war, they were causing a little bit of trouble around Soho now and again, and they always wanted pints. And Gaston wanted to look after the French and the Belgians and the artists and people like that. So
So it was
he
who you kept out,
He just
effectively.
decided to do halves because he didn't want to have rabble in.
Yes.
And it worked perfectly, and it became habitual, and it's part of what the business is, and it's part of its DNA, and it gives it a real sense of difference. And
yeah.
everybody loves it, and it can only be done there. And it's a great example of something that can't be copied or rolled out because it belongs in that place. And
I'm
Leslie's
trying to think
great
which
custodian of that terraceness.
a full pint, right? Like, when you're abroad, a smaller pint or a small, I don't know what they call it, begins with a C. I was just having them in Spain.
Can
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the
Or in
perfect.
Portugal, those tiny little.
Those tiny little.
Oh, I love.
I don't understand why they don't pour it to the top though. You know, like when you get a pint, they just fucking go like that.
Yeah.
And it's never pulled to the top. It
Well-
starts to wind me up.
well,
Well, there's a thing called a schooner in Australia, which
Yeah.
is 2/3 of a pint.
Well, the theory is it's because it warms up too quick.
Yes.
You know,
yeah,
because the place is so hot.
yeah.
I see. Because in Australia, the schooner, which I think is 2/3 of a pint,
It's
is quite.
around that, but I believe it changes from state to state in
Got
Australia
it.
as
Okay.
well. So
It's
you never
not
know how
a
much.
ba- It's not a bad idea, actually, as an alternative. You know, as a halfway house between a half and a pint.
Yeah, but we're creatures of habit, aren't we?
Yeah, yeah.
And having a pint is a habitual thing, and having it in the right glass is a thing of habit.
Yes.
And people who like to drink pints and like to drink pints.
Pints.
Of course, when they go on holiday and they're in Portugal or northern Spain,
When
or
in
they're-
Rome.
or yeah, exactly. But you come to an English pub where the atmosphere is dark and wooden and beautiful, and you can hide, and it's got all the panels and the different features and fixtures. You wouldn't generally feel that it was right to drink a tiny beer, unless, of course, you're in the French house.
Yeah, but that's what I'm trying to. That's the genius of the French house. Do you know what I mean? It's because when you're there, and I suppose you're out the front of that little, behind the fucking thing.
Yeah.
It just feels. Maybe it's because you're outside. There's something about it feels right, and I think it's intangible sometimes. Some
But
things are
not
just
only is it intangible, it's totally ubiquitous and absolutely unique. And that's why it's so popular.
But occasionally, those sort of whimsical. We talked about, I think it's the Thrasher's French fries in Ocean City, New Jersey. Is it
It
Maryland?
doesn't do ketchup.
Maryland, I think it is. No, they don't do ketchup, and they only do salt and vinegar, which in America is really weird.
Yeah.
And occasionally, there's that very clever thing of what you... Well, in a sense, okay, what you don't do is also a form of communication. So if we're being absolutely objective about this, what makes Waitrose posher than Tesco, right? To some extent is not what they sell, it's what they don't sell or what isn't prominent on the shelves. Okay, so one of the things that always amuses me at my local Waitrose is going around looking for pork scratchings, okay? A totally delicious but not very fashionable food until recently. And it's always right on the bottom shelf. And you don't have, if you go to Waitrose, you don't have 3 yards of Pop-Tarts. Okay, and so a large part of the curation of Waitrose is actually the hiding or absence of naff foods rather than the presence of posh foods.
Yes, interesting.
You know,
Why else does Waitrose make you feel like you're having a posh shop rather than Tesco's, where you might not always feel that? Why is it? And I'll tell you, it's all about what you feel, and it's all about the senses.
Yeah, it is.
And it's about symmetries, and it's about the width of the aisles, and it's about the colour, and it's about the lighting. That's about what you smell and what you feel and what you would taste if you go to the cheese counter. And those little things all add up to an esoteric feeling of, yes, this has a higher value.
So it's very interesting about that, because I had a colleague who worked on the Marks and Spencer's account for ages. And what he wanted to say, he never had the balls to do it, and I don't blame him. But he always wanted to say to Marks and Spencer, look, I'm not going to work on any advertising for you at all until you sort out your flooring and lighting in your clothing department.
Yeah.
Because Marks and Spencer's obviously have some sort of procurement which does the flooring and the lighting for food and for clothing in the same way.
I totally agree, and I know exactly what you mean. It feels like being in a dentist's chair. It does.
And I'm kind of going, you can't charge, you can't get someone to spend 250 quid on clothes and shoes if you have basically industrial lighting and a bloody easy clean floor.
Totally agree, and it's a perfect example of a silent irritant.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Yeah, it doesn't feel like a premium experience. Despite the fact that the clothes are often excellent, they're very, very well priced. It's one of those weird, I always made a joke about the weird rule, which is in clothing retail, if you spend 100 quid or more, they have to give you a rope-handled bag. Yeah. It makes no sense. It's just one of those kind of, if you spent 200 quid and you get a polythene bag, something feels wrong.
Absolutely.
Fundamentally.
I want to go back into the 5
By the way, actually, one extra point. I think in any form of capitalist exchange, there's a necessary level of bullshit for any level of expenditure. So that it feels, what I'm saying is that to buy a car online is a perfectly rational thing to do.
Yeah.
Okay? But it feels wrong. If I'm going to spend a 5-figure sum on a car, I just want someone to just do a little bit of, and by the way, this is the glove compartment and and likewise with why are estate agents posh? Okay, because if you're going to spend a 6-figure sum, okay, you kind of want someone a bit posh just to make a bit of a fuss of you, because it's just a level of bullshit that seems commensurate with the amount you're spending.
And the experience of the transaction is something that you want to be able to memorize and tell people about.
That goes back to the shareable story.
Yes, it's all about stories.
But by the way, one reason for low economic growth is that more and more companies have outsourced work to their customers. So I had to get a loan to buy this car. It was a partial loan. Basically, it's a day's work. Okay. Dealing with the documents, signing with them, taking a photograph of your driving license, taking a photograph of this, proving your identity. That work used to be done by companies. It's now outsourced to their own customers. Now, I remember thinking, okay, to buy a car is 2 days of work, roughly speaking.
Well.
Okay. If I were to move house, I'd probably have to take at least a week's holiday, maybe 2, just to deal with the administrative bullshit, which used to be taken care of by other people, but now is basically lands on you. The extent to which I think that's a barrier to economic activity, because it's loads of silent irritants, is difficult to calculate. But it wouldn't surprise me at all to know that one reason there's a lot less labour market mobility is literally that people just can't face the pain of moving house anymore, because it will literally mean, probably 12 hours on various web pages proving you are who you said you are. You open a bank account, you've got to prove you're not Pablo Escobar. Right? So everything is calibrated for a very low level of trust, which leads to a very high level of bureaucracy, with the additional curse that the bureaucratic work now falls on you. I mean, there used to be insurance brokers. You rang up and said, "Can you get an insurance quote for my car?" Now you're there typing in bullshit about, the car registration number and whether it's garaged overnight.
The what I want to go back into is the five senses, and I think we've talked about like how with smell, right? Like you go to a banging restaurant.
That's actually six. There's proprioception, which is how comfortable you feel in yourself. But
there's also warm and cold.
Good point.
Interesting, yeah. What are the? Because I think we've talked about it, Rory, about when you could almost go into the way you could spruce up any restaurant is just make the bogs smell nice. Yeah. Make the bogs look really good. The perceived value of the restaurant will go through the roof.
No, bogs are pretty important because I think when you go to the toilet and it doesn't look clean, it's way bigger than a silent irritant. You start to even think of what's in the food, like, what are the staff like? Do they care? Why don't they care about me?
Yeah,
because this is a public space which should be clean, tidy. I should have nice soap. It should be. I shouldn't be able to see
Indian restaurants are famously bad at that, aren't they? With the exception of Cuisine Sevenoaks, which has clearly overinvested intelligently on its loo. The Indian restaurant
everyone get down.
Basically, the whole thing of Buc-ee's in Texas, the gas station chain, the entire business was predicated around restrooms. They started with the restroom experience, and everything else was reverse engineered from that.
Isn't that right?
What have they got? They got the Japanese bulges.
Well, no, it's particularly the women's loos. The whole thing was, how are you a successful gas station? You have to be attractive enough for people to wait an extra 10 miles with a full bladder to go to you rather than the intervening gas stations. And then the entire thing, guy called Beaver something or other, the logo is a bit. The entire thing was predicated on that. Rush the hairdresser chain, overspend on loos, precisely because it's what you might call reverse benchmarking. It's an unexpected bonus because you go into a hairdresser's loo and you expect to find it used partly as a storeroom with a mop leaning against the wall, and instead you go in and the thing's marble. Yeah, and it's as you said, it's under promise, over deliver.
Yeah. The BP. I don't know if it's probably, the BP garages that got the M&S in. Those BP garages. They've every single one that's got a toilet.
And birdsong, actually.
And birdsong, which is weird. But now, like if I drive to a petrol station, it's not even a silent irritant. It's a fucking annoyance. When you walk in, you get out your car, and there's no bog, and they're like, and you're like, for fuck's sake, you don't know what it is. BP, I don't know if it was a masterstroke.
It was a decision by BP Connect.
You know there's going to be a good toilet and there's going to be a good M&S, usually an M&S there. Super interesting. But you've got...
By the way, as a brand partnership, that is absolute gold dust,
Genius.
Isn't it? Genius. Could you license your approach to Guinness serving and actually... You know how White Castle started in the US? And you call it the system. And so basically you actually you license the Devonshire system.
I've got to go back
to other pubs.
You're making me think like you feel like the guy on the quay in the Caribbean again. You're trying to get me to do another job.
And so, if you franchise the Devonshire system of Guinness delivery, you'd basically be there asleep while the money rolled in per pint.
I don't know. I like what I do, and I spend all my time doing what I do. When I'm asleep, I'm asleep. Do you know what I mean? I've got the best job ever. I literally spend my whole time in the pub making sure people are having a nice time. I'm having a nice time myself. So I'm not complaining about
This way, it's also franchising out of Devonshire. That would be hilarious. Going back to
it is actually. I mean, interesting. There's a great brand partnership, genius brand partnership, which is Nespresso and Starbucks.
Yeah.
So,
is that
so all those Starbucks drinks are made by Nestle, and the argument was very simple. Nestle knew how to distribute and how to manufacture ready-to-drink coffee. Starbucks didn't. Yeah. Starbucks had a brand for that kind of coffee. Nestle didn't. Partnership, ka-ching, beautiful.
Yeah. If you're a challenger brand that's absolutely killing it in D2C, but you're struggling to crack retail, then you've got to listen to this. Maybe you've got an Ocado listing, maybe you've got a Whole Foods listing, maybe you're absolutely killing it in Selfridges, maybe you're absolutely killing it in your farm shop and your indies. But my friends, making the leap, crossing El Chasm, crossing El Rubicon to grocery retail is not easy. It's the Champions League of FMCG. It's super hard. It means playing at a higher level
And that's where so many amazing brands sadly stumble. Look, retailers want stories backed by data, not dreams and a pretty pitch deck. And let's be real, supermarkets are not just going to magically make a space for you and your little brand. They need data. Something's got to go for you to get in, for you to get on shelf. And that is why I've got to tell you about North Star. They are the team that's helping purpose-led FMCG brands go from gut instinct dreams to unstoppable pitch decks that actually unlock retailers. North Star are not like another data company that force feed you data like foie gras, that act like a NASA space mission. It's super simple to use. Their team are amazing and they actually get the challenger mindset. North Star are your shortcut to smarter decisions, stronger pitches and investor confidence, all built specifically for challenger brands like yours. You don't need a massive sales team, you need North Star. Link in the show notes. Click that link and you'll be able to book a free demo with North Star. Highly recommend that, and thank me later.
In terms, one thing I wanted to speak to you about is, and getting both your takes on this, is interviewed John Hegarty the other week, and he was basically saying that the rise of the alcohol-free movement, and actually just more pertinently, the loss of the long boozy lunch has kind of killed creativity. Obviously, if you're a fucking sesh head and alky, then obviously stick away from it. But he says creativity is a generous, convivial act.
Yeah.
And I think we've talked about it before, like with creativity, ideas need to fucking have sex with each other to blossom into these
Yes,
things.
he's right, by the way.
I actually have a theory that that's a load of bollocks. Which is that people are crying wolf about the fact that people aren't drinking anymore and that people aren't having lunch anymore because some restaurants aren't doing well at lunchtime and some pubs aren't selling a lot of booze. And there is loads of marketing and babble about people moving completely over to 0% beer. I don't see it. I just don't see it. I don't know what's...
Well, you wouldn't sit in a pub and fellas.
I mean, but for every 20,000... By the way, our Guinness Zero is delicious. Yeah. And I drink it all the time. And it's really great because I can use it as a placebo.
Do you do a bit of zebra stripe drinking as well?
Occasionally, yeah, I do. Yeah, and I also have semi-skimmed, which is... you get a zero up to 2/3, and then you top it up with the real stuff occasionally.
That's fucking good. Yeah.
It's skim Guinness. It's a fabulous drink, and honestly, we did a blind tasting with 6 journalists here, drinks journalists, and we gave them 0 against the regular Guinness, and not one of them got it correct. They all thought the 0 was the alcoholic. So as a drink, it's perfect. Yeah, and it works really well. But for every 20,000 pints of Guinness we sell, and that's about what we sell a week.
Yep.
We sell between 300 and 500 pints of zero. So it is little proportion, in terms of, and for the market to be going, we're all fucked because everyone's drinking 0. It's just not the case.
By the way, I mean, in fairness to John Hegarty, what he was saying is that the discretionary time and the boozy lunch and advertising was what made it where you got the remarkable breakthroughs.
Well, basically, what he was saying, what he was saying is like, I think that the idea of like we were saying that ideas need to have sex. That was kind of this Matt Ridley's thing, right? Ideas need to have sex. And basically, if you go into banal...
It's serendipitous.
Serendipity. If you go into a boardroom, which is like full of glass, and there's a thing there, it's like trying to have sex with a straitjacket on. Do you know what I mean? It's just the ideas can't spread.
Nothing wrong with that.
And... really minor fantasies here.
You've offended the entire bondage community. The entire bondage community now has been absolutely outraged.
But anyway, but he was saying the ideas can't spread, and I think the thing with the lunch is it created this almost as a separate point to the rise of the alcohol-free movement. But how would you say, in terms of creative ideas, kind of booze is laces the trait to that? I think.
If you take the advertising industry, I think if you get rid of the 10% of waste, which is ostensible waste. Okay, in other words, people doing things for which they aren't specifically billable or demanded from a client. If you take away the 10-20% of discretionary time and money, it's no longer the advertising industry, nor is it a rewarding place in which to work. So what happens is that in the efforts to cut costs, those things which are magical, discretionary, unnecessary, are the first to get cut. But actually, if you take it's the icing on the cake, without which you haven't got much of a cake. Okay, And it's very complicated because the real I won't go into this because this isn't an advertising podcast, but I could do a separate whole session on this. That actually, John's absolutely right. Incidentally, you're absolutely right in the sense that I've also read some better demographic analysis on all that stuff that Gen Z don't drink. I
think there's a huge bias in the media to say because something new has come along, then everybody's doing the new thing, and the old thing is now dead and gone. And I think it's a bias.
It's a complete bias.
Yeah, and it's just not true. I mean, I always think
there is one thing which I think is the decline in the really heavy drinker.
Well,
as a proportion of the
that's a good
population.
thing.
That's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. In other words, there would have been people routinely, 20, 30. I mean, companies would employ people 20, 30 years ago, because I worked with some of them, who are basically high-functioning alcoholics.
Yeah, loads.
And he said, if you're going to brief them, go in the morning, because they're not much use after lunch. Now, sometimes, by the way, those people were very good in other ways, but it would be much, much harder to maintain. I mean, there's a famous...
But I think once again, yes, we remember those and we know them, and they all became a little bit famous, and, they became like Rat Pack and whatever, but they were a tiny proportion of the people doing the work.
Also, I think it was very, very time-consuming to be that heavy a boozer.
Yeah.
That you had to be a journalist. I was talking to the taxi driver who brought me here, and she said, I'm not giving away anything. She said, my dad worked for CID, and he became an alcoholic because the Criminal Investigation Department, so Scotland Yard, because a lot of his work was basically observation. And so your job involved being in a pub for hours every day. And effectively, there were a lot of jobs where you either had a huge amount of time. I mean, footballers often get into trouble with this because you actually got a lot of money and a lot of spare time. Yeah. It's pretty time. It's right. There's a wonderful book, by the way, I really recommend on this, Poor Me, P-O-U-R, Me, by A.A. Gill.
Oh, that's one of the best books I've ever read.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic book.
Gill was the best writer ever.
Extraordinary, yeah.
Did you ever meet him?
I did. I met him a couple of times. God bless him. Yeah, brilliant.
What was he? Because I interviewed Jeremy Lee, and he said he went in there with Anthony into Quo Vadis.
Yeah,
probably about a year, because I think they died between a year between each other.
Correct.
And I mean, I've read everything by A. Gill. He's fucking like his essay about the ivy as it's opening up in the morning. It's just.
Well, I haven't read that one. Okay, I'll go and get that. Yeah,
fantastic. Like, he talks about the ovens as like big whales. It's beautiful.
He wrote one about the warning about Brexit as well.
Yes.
Which is an incredible read.
Yes.
But he was an absolute darling man.
Yes.
Beautifully dressed, always really well presented, incredibly erudite, and real gentleman. He was a lovely man.
Because I think he didn't actually write, he verbalised.
He dictated.
He dictates it, yeah. Yeah, his essay about when he's in Charing Cross Hospital, like, it's proper sad, but the way he writes about kind of his last, I think he described his cancer as like, I've got the full English. Yeah. Which is just like he was such
devastating.
Devastating.
By the way, there's a lovely thing which I've always found fabulous, which is you dictate to the Times copy takers, which all newspapers used to have before you had laptops. So most people would write by hand and then dictate. I think to some extent. I think
what do you mean? So
he was dyslexic, famously dyslexic.
Yes,
so he actually he did scribble notes, but he rather than dictated. And he'd be dictating this absolutely immortal prose to the Times copy taker, and they go, and he'd finish a paragraph, the copy taker would say, is there much more of this? I love the fact that you can be that good, and yet fundamentally, it's like no man is a hero to his valet or whatever it is. Yeah. The copy takers are there going, yeah, okay, yeah. Okay, is there much more of this? I love that. But no, I mean, it's astonishing as a writer. P.J. O'Rourke would have been the sort of British equivalent, or the American equivalent, I suppose, for those.
And Brendan Behan was the Irish one.
You've got it exactly,
Who's, sorry, Brandon
Behan.
Yeah.
I need to read that. The writes a bit like A. Gill.
Fabulous.
But that book, Poor Me, is... But one of the things he says is never say of an alcoholic or a drug addict that they're lazy. Because the amount of work and ingenuity that has to go into actually maintaining your habit is extraordinary. It's actually an incredibly industrial. Being an alcoholic is actually extraordinarily hard work.
So
you said you met him. What was that experience like?
So I think I need to remember the Stevie Pearl was opening a restaurant in Canary Wharf, and I was lucky to be invited by Faye Marshall who was the restaurant critic at the Evening Standard. God bless her, she's one of my very best friends. She did 42 years there. So she said, we're going to this restaurant in Canary Wharf. The name escapes me. Stevie will be upset that I've forgotten the name. But when we got there, Adrian was already sat. So poor restaurant had to cope with two, national food critics at the same time, at the same lunch. So it was a stressful time for them. But I managed to have a good old chat with him, and top man.
Yeah, amazing. Because I don't know because he went to was the AA for the Alcohol Anonymous.
I don't think so.
Doesn't he say that in his book? I don't know that because that's his name's Adrian, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, he was. Those were his initials, I think.
Oh, was
but
it?
I think he adopted AA because he didn't drink, did he?
He gave it up. Yeah.
Yeah, no, because he was. I think he went into. He started writing quite late as well. It was like 31 or something.
Extraordinary
Yeah,
story,
it was insane. I want to go.
He had this most unbelievable tailored tweed suits and beautiful suits. He was so elegant.
Yes.
Really, really top guy. I can't think of anybody now as well presented as he always was.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. And I believe his daughter Flora has had a number of his suits retailed for her, and she wears them, and they're absolutely fabulous.
Yes.
She's a great journalist too.
Oh, really? Amazing. Yeah, he was like just a true British. Well, he was a British icon, wasn't he? Really?
Yeah.
Rory, I want to go back to the sort of 10 times 1 is not the same as 1 times 10, because I think that's a really interesting way of, like, I know...
It's a failing when you accumulate statistics.
Yeah.
For example, 1 repeat customer is not the same as 10 one-off customers at a very crude level.
Absolutely correct.
Okay.
It's just a really good way of, like, viewing things slightly differently. I really like it.
Well, I'll give you an example of this.
Yeah.
It also applies to pricing, okay?
Right.
Which is one of the reasons you have a season ticket is that...
Well, as in like a train season.
So that 100 people who take a train journey once are going to be less price sensitive than one person who takes the same journey 100 times. So one of my arguments would be against high speed 2 and in favour of high speed 1. So if you invest money in improving commuter journeys, okay, then someone, if you live in Folkestone, high speed 1 saves you as a Folkestone commuter probably half an hour, roughly 300 times a year, 150 times 2, okay, maybe 200 times a year times 2.
Yeah.
Okay? That's life-changing, okay? If you take high speed 2, not that many people go to Manchester every day. That would be silly, okay? And most people will go to Manchester 3, 4, 5 times a year. There is therefore a difference between saving one person 200 hours a year and saving 200 people 1 hour a year. In terms of the mathematical models they use for time saving in journey time, the value of time saved is exactly the same. Mm-hmm. It obviously is, okay? I mean, high speed 1 means that if you wanted to, you could move to Folkestone. It fundamentally changes behaviour.
Yeah.
And you could argue, that things like the Concorde, which save a few, people very infrequently, save them quite a lot of time, are not the same as saving people a little time repeatedly.
Yeah.
So it's a fundamental failure of most mathematical models that they assume that in maths multiplication is commutative. 1 times 10 is the same as 10 times 1.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason you need a season ticket, okay, is that someone who makes that journey 200 times a year. I'll give you a perfect example of this, okay? Yeah. There's an autoroute in France which they charge for. They charge for their motorways. And the route, I think it's the A10 down from Calais, is always known as the autoroute des Anglais. And you drive on this, and if you're in the summer, every single car is an English car. And you kind of go, this is a bit weird. Why don't French people use this motorway? And then, of course, you realise that the English people are using the autoroute twice a year, once in each direction. OK, they're paying 25, 30 euros for the trip. Doesn't really matter. It's a small amount compared to the rest of my holiday. Off we go.
And probably saves half an hour.
If you're a French person and you use the motorway every day, 5 euros a day for a short motorway journey multiplied by 200 is a significant bite out of your disposable income. Mm. And so that's why you have season tickets, because you can obviously charge someone more for a journey they make once a year, Whereas if that person is going to make the journey 200 times a year, you need... Now, Amazon Prime is kind of a recognition of that. Okay, there's a difference between 10 people paying for delivery once and one person paying for delivery 10 times in a row. So what Amazon Prime is, in a sense, is it's the realization by Jeff Bezos that if we want to have frequent customers, we need to find a different way of charging for delivery. And it is, in a sense, it's a reward for frequency, I suppose, Amazon Prime. It's a very simple idea. And by the way, I've never understood why restaurants and pubs don't occasionally try it. You know, in other words, join this pub, it's £10 a month, and in return, you get free X.
Osh is reeling his skin.
I know. My answer to that is that people who come to pubs don't like things changing too much.
No.
And that's good, you know.
But by the way, there is a strength of the pub, if you think about it, extraordinary strength of the pub, despite the fact that pubs are majorly beleaguered, which is it is a timeless concept.
It is.
I mean, it always fascinates me that, you know, a lot of pubs are Victorian in decor. My kids love them. My kids love pubs.
That's right.
Which is fabulous.
That's great. And we're finding that loads of Gen Zs
Isn't it interesting?
are
Isn't
coming in here and having a really great time.
Skewed though because of COVID. I read an
Yeah.
article that basically was like no one was drinking because of COVID, or those 18-year-olds who would have gone to uni during COVID and been when they start getting on it. Essentially, they didn't have that.
I think The Economist pulled that apart.
Was that what that was? I remember reading something about it. Basically, there's a lag in the data because those 18-year-olds or Gen Z weren't able to go and...
So the data difference, this idea of this huge generational shift in drinking patterns is massively overstated by a couple of what you might call outlier years in the data.
Yeah.
So the COVID years, I think, formed part of the data set. Now, once you have a weird outlier in your data set like that, you can't really reliably draw inferences from it. I mean, obviously, there are factors like, obviously, economic cost, the availability of other drugs, preloading, da-da-da-da-da.
They've always been there.
But they've always been there to an extent.
Yeah. I think one of the things that a lot of the pub codes are missing out on is the price of entry. So one of the things that we've done is while our Guinness might be slightly less than everyone else and our lager might be slightly less, we're still, you know, around $7.50 for premium lager and our Guinness is $6.90. But we keep Beck's on as a entry lager for $4.95, and the same with our Star Brahman, which comes in a schooner we talked about earlier, comes in 2/3 of a pint. That's $4.95. So the barrier to entry is much lower than going to a chain pub. Wetherspoon's accepted, by the way. Big fan of Tim Martin. Where you go to one of the London chain pubs, and their cheapest pint is around $7.50. So. You know, there's a big difference between $4.95 and $7.50.
This is because actually there's a very interesting. There's a restaurant in Miami which is the most profitable per square meter, and it's called something Stone Crab. Have you come across this? It's occasionally researched, and one of the weird things is they've always a lot of business consultants went in and said, obviously you have this Stone Crab which is pretty profitable.
What is it like a?
It's a weird restaurant because rather like Chick-fil-A not being open on Sunday, they close for 3 months of the year because it's out of crab season or something. I love crab, by the way. I think magnificent thing. I'd go there like a shot if I were in Miami. But the other thing they do is they've always done this kind of chicken sandwich, which is the entry-level product, which is much cheaper. And all the consultants go to them and say, you have to get rid of this because it's a lower margin item. And their argument is, no, because the whole nature of our restaurant depends on us having cops eating here. Yeah. Okay, if we take away the low cost items, we're no longer the same place because the kind of milieu and the clientele would basically become a load of assholes on Valentine's Day, on their wedding anniversary.
Correct.
And you no longer have the same vibe.
And you have to have diversity and a range of different, not just occasions, but different types of people.
Got it.
You know, whether they're from near or far away, whether they're from a low economic or high economic, or whether they are, having a long visit or a short one.
That's actually a criterion for a great pub, isn't it? That the demography is mixed.
It has to be inclusive. Everybody has to have an opportunity to be able to get there. And that's why we do the 3-course set menu in in the restaurant, and we won't change the price of that, despite the fact that the margin is low.
Remind me what it is. It's 20...
29 for 3 courses, 25 for 2.
25 for 2.
And you get a full absolutely brilliant prawn cocktail. You get the
Yeah.
skirt steak and chips with the béarnaise, and you get the sticky toffee pudding. And, you know, it accounts for 25% of everybody who goes in the restaurant.
And it's a low-margin item.
Low margin, but we fill the sea and we make some money on it, and the
Interesting.
people have a brilliant time. And we get a lot of people come in and they just have water,
Yeah.
and their entire bill for 2 is 60 quid plus a little bit of service, and they're delighted, and we are delighted too, because the same as the cups and the chicken sandwich, you have to have that sort of diversity of democracy, of demographic,
Yeah.
in the place, in order for it to feel real and feel chaotic and feel
You
wonderful.
probably know a pub called in Kinnerton Street called the Nag's Head.
I love
Yes.
Kevin Moran.
Absolutely
He's fabulous.
fantastic
I love
pub.
him. Yeah.
By the way, total bit of irrelevance. It's the only time I've ever had that practical joke played on me. This is quite a few years ago because there was a payphone there, and I had to use the payphone where someone puts a whelk inside the mouthpiece of the phone. Okay. What happens is the whelk decomposes, and then when you actually go to make a phone call, you're practically sick. And so that was, it must have been Kevin Moran is the only person whom I've
Definitely.
ever said, I'm terribly sorry, but there's a whelk in your receiver. And which sounds like something from a French surrealist thing. But what's fantastic about that pub, it's in Mayfair. So, you know, 1 or 2 of the clientele will be authentic billionaires, won't they?
Yeah.
Okay. And yet, funnily enough, it was the local for Haig, the acid bath murderer. Okay, so it's even got a... he was a 1930s guy. So he's actually got a serial killer among
Yeah.
his past clientele. But that's exactly as it should be, you know.
The last time I was in there, I went in with my daughter about a year ago or so at 11 o'clock, and she, famously Lara, the AGM here, she was running another pub actually at the time, so it was about a year and a half ago. Went in there, he's having a coffee on the bar, and I've introduced Lara, and obviously he's this huge, bombastic, brilliant character, and he was lovely to her, and we were just having a little chat, and he's gone, I've got a little lesson for you. What's that? And he got his coffee, milky coffee, in a mug, and he put it behind on the old optics, you know, you click, and you hear the click, and you can hear the whiskey dropping into his coffee. And then he does it again. He goes click, and Tony goes, what's that? He goes to Laura, and she goes, well, that's a cup of coffee with whiskey. And he said, no, this is a wuzzer.
A wazzer.
A wuzzer.
Yeah.
And she goes, why? Because it was a cup of coffee.
That is so good.
He's brilliant. I love him.
What? Because that's just for listeners. Like it's down like the back streets, like near Pimlico, isn't it?
It's
kind of old.
if you find the Berkeley Hotel, there's a little
Side
road,
street.
side
Salou,
street, and then it goes
brilliant Indian
round.
restaurant on the corner.
Yeah.
Pakistani restaurant, Salou,
What's,
which does Halim Akbari, which is the greatest single.
That's what you
Indian
ordered when we
dish.
went to Ambassador's
Yeah,
Club,
I'm
wasn't it?
absolutely
Yeah.
obsessed with that dish. Yeah.
Well, it's like porridge and lamb, isn't it?
Yeah, it's lamb porridge. No. But you pimp it because it's. This is why I think KFC is superior to McDonald's, okay? Because McDonald's is kind of fascistic. It's dirigiste. This is what you eat, and this is how you eat it. With the KFC, you can kind of mix the gravy up with the fries and everything else, okay? And Halim Akbari, at a much more elevated level, you get little bowls of chili, little bowls of ground ginger, little bowls of this, and you can basically sprinkle it on and vary the flavouring.
Because the personalisation increases perceived value, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's I told you the marketing director of Nando's in Oz interviewed him the other week. He was basically saying half their genius is the personalisation. You go there and each dish, so we could order a half chicken, but we go up to that little fucking station and there's all our different bits, and it increases that's one of their genius.
And actually, I mean,
that's why I love a curry, because you can just you get so many different little varieties of.
You
get the naan bread,
it's
put it in.
combinatory. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
You get variable reinforcement sort of stimulus, which is more interesting.
And I know every bit of podcast that we ever hear of Rory, he always talks about Indian food being your favourite and the best iteration of restaurant food in the UK. And of course, you're right. And you've mentioned Gymkhana and Virshwami and Ambassador's Clubhouse, but I think that Chinese food's better.
Really?
I think Chinese food is the most underrated cuisine.
Yes, that's probably
in the UK, because there is incredible Chinese food, and most people never get to try it.
That's kind of true. It's actually, you're right. Okay,
sharing-
I don't think it's as good as Indian, so I'm not going to accept that. But
I knew you were good.
But when you say, when you say it's underrated, I think that's fair, because it became slightly naff through ubiquity and through. That's fair actually. No, I think actually, I mean, there probably is scope for someone to actually effectively do a dishoom on Chinese food.
There's no doubt about that, and I think it'll
What
probably.
do you think we get? So you said like most people in Britain will never get to try it. Like where's good to go? And what
I think
are the
one of the
misconceptions about like Chinese food in your opinion?
I think the barrier to going into a Chinese is weirdly high because you see these great big menus, and while you know as a customer what Singapore noodles is and what beef chow mein is and what dim sum is. You go in there and you can be kind of, there's too much information, there's too many things quite often to choose. And if you go into regional stuff, you might know a couple of bits and you might know what to order. But if you look at the regional menus, whether it's it's the Sichuan or the the Jian or any of
Is
these.
Sichuan just a region or is it a spice?
It's both.
Okay, sorry.
But then you start seeing things you don't quite understand, and there's words you don't get, and then you feel a little bit, I'm not sure. But when you
The choice architecture is a total fuck up, isn't it?
I wouldn't say it is because it's for people who know.
Yeah.
But most people don't know.
No.
And I think that's a slight barrier to entry. But then when you do find one that you love and you like, and you know the dishes that you like, and you go back again, it's the best restaurant in the world. I've got a couple down here that I just absolutely
Is
love.
one still in Queensway? Do you remember that one in Queensway which used to have fish painted?
My
on the
mate,
window?
it's there because my mate, I don't know, the names escape me, but my mate went for his leaving do.
Do you know my most depressing story? So we've just been to
Something
Marks and Spencer's in Whiteley's. This is years ago.
Yeah.
With my wife. And we walked past that restaurant. She said, should we go in and eat there? Well, no, we just bought all this Marks and Spencer's food. So we went home, ate the Marks and Spencer's food. 20 minutes later, bloody Marlon Brando went in. So I never got it. Now, in fact, that was his favourite favourite restaurant in London. Now, I think we can confidently say that Marlon probably knew his food. The late Marlon Brando probably
What would you
knew
say
how
are
to
the
eat.
best Chinese restaurants in London then?
The best.
Well, like the ones that you frequent the most.
The ones I like the best. I mean, Dumplings Legend on Gerrard Street is
I've been
absolutely
there.
fabulous.
Yes.
Okay.
Really, really good. There's a number of Four Seasons around the place. There's one famously in the Hippodrome. There's one on Gerrard Street, but the one on Wardour Street, just down from O'Neill's, for some reason tastes a million times better than all of them.
Yeah.
And the Singapore noodles in there, the down new with garlic on, the Sichuan chicken, the one with all the chilies and the cloud mushrooms and the lotus root, absolutely sensational. And they do the barbecue duck as well and rice with that amazing rich sauce on top. And I could eat it all the time.
Have you been to Beer and Noodles?
Oh, it's great. Yeah,
You like this, Rory. So they've got their, your do one thing well. They've got this hero product, which is essentially like a bowl of noodles, and they bring up this fuck off big beef shin, essentially, and they pull it at the table and they slice it with scissors, and it goes into a dish. But it's like, the noodles like thick, fat noodles, and then it's just beer. It's like such a simple concept.
Why is there a faux trend where laksa is much better? What's going on there? Malaysian food's underrepresented, isn't it?
There's a brilliant Malaysian down here.
Oh, right, okay.
Come back to me in a second.
Because that's an absolute...
But of course, you asked me about the best Chinese. Of course, it's Andrew Wong.
Yeah.
It's A. Wong. I mean, he's just...
He needs to be good earth.
But I like the good earth too, but I think that's kind of like Waitrose of Chinese food.
It is,
isn't it?
yeah.
It's all the stuff you recognise, and it's done.
That's
well.
the best way of putting it. It's the Waitrose of Chinese food. It's like
my neighbour in Deal said in the late 1960s, he was an ad guy kind of in the Madman era, and he said in the 1960s, he said there were two questions that were important, which is Indian or Chinese and Beatles or Stones. And he always believed the correct answer was Indian and Stones. Yeah. But anyway, we can.
what would yours be on that?
I'd probably, I have to confess, I'd probably be Indian and Stones.
Wow, that's because I would definitely be Chinese and Beatles.
You'd be Chinese and Beatles.
I'm Indian and Beatles, yeah.
You're Indian and Beatles,
yeah.
okay, right.
That's the other thing is what on again John Hegarty was saying. There's 2 documentaries to watch about creativity, and this is what links to the booze. Is there's the Beatles one, which was like they're kind of the Get Back, which they're kind of mechanical and they're like in the studio. Then he goes, go and watch the Stones one. They just get fucking off their head and they get so creative out of all these ideas. He's like, there's no wrong or right way. Yeah. But it's
like the opposite to a good idea.
Is another good idea.
Another good idea.
Yeah,
I don't know where I heard that.
You know, it's not. By the way, it's not me. I thought it was me. Okay, it's weirder than that. It's actually weirdly Einstein and Niels Bohr.
Wow.
So they had this weird thing. Because I googled it eventually. Going, it's obviously not. Somebody else must have said this, and I was just thinking it'd be some random bloke. And it turned out they had this discussion. They said in kind of boring physics, the opposite of a good idea is wrong. But in high-level physics, the opposite of a good idea is another good idea.
Wow.
It's some conversation recorded between Einstein and Niels Bohr. Mm. But it's true in marketing, obviously. It's true in psychology. That, in other words, there's high touch and there's no touch, but medium touch doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you have to be either one or the other.
You've got to be one or the other.
The one thing I wanted to speak about, or we were talking about, is like how, and again, a lot of listeners that message me who've got their own restaurant, they're like, I'm not going to say who, but like, it's struggle street right now. Like it's very, very tough. And maybe bring in some behavioural science here, but like how restaurants can utilise space effectively to generate more revenue. I think what we're talking about is Trinity in Clapham.
Yeah.
Like yes, he's got
brilliant guy.
Trinity downstairs, Trinity upstairs, which is probably more, as you say, approachable or entry level. And then in the summer, that courtyard, last year he turned it into Trinity outside. It's essentially 3 restaurants in one place. Now they've got a Sani truck, which does these, huge, delicious sandwiches. But I think, again, a lot of people message me like, we can't get punters through the door, or we're just struggling. I'd love, Rory, if you can, and then also you can jump in on this as well. It's like, what are some of the creative ways, or what would you do to get punters through the door? I think one thing that I've always believed is like working from pubs, not somewhere like here. Working from pubs is better than working from cafes. Because one, I know they tried to do co-working spaces in pubs, or like getting people in, like you get free coffee. 1, it's less quiet. 2, you always get fucking plugged. 3, you're not surrounded like sardines. And 4, if you're having a bad day, you can have a pint. Like, there are much better places. But what are some of the ways you'd creatively use space for?
There are a lot of questions we could ask, which is, in Britain, outside London, are pub car parks massively underused real estate? So even if you serve food in your pub, should you allow food trucks to come along as a kind of once a week destination thing? Why don't pubs sell milk? Why don't pubs sell vapes? Right? Yeah. I mean, it was a major part of footfall in pubs, was getting people in to buy cigarettes from the machine.
Yeah.
I just ask these questions. Now, maybe they're legal reasons, maybe I'm talking total shit. But it does strike me as strange that a pub is a community hub, which would be, by the way, a perfect place to relocate a post office as well. I've always thought that would be really cute. Okay. That just as in a sense, farmers, if it all depends, but farmers investigate multiple sources of revenue, basically. In other words, you've got a couple of Airbnbs and a converted stables, and then you've got a bit of office space in what used to be the barn, and then you farm, and then you open a farmer's market. That ultimately, one obvious thing is, by the way, it's what capitalism should be. Capitalism isn't the efficient provision of what you already do, which is what it's turned into. It should be a process of discovery of how you create the most value possible with your available resources. Okay, which is really an experimental process. Now, obviously, there are pubs like this which absolutely know what they are and make money doing it. But it does strike me as strange that country pubs could try and become a bit more variegated on the grounds that if I went to get a pint of milk at 10 o'clock at night from the pub, I'd now be able to park because there's a car park. And let's be honest, I go in and have a pint.
Yes.
Okay. There was a famous thing, by the way, very weird finding from consumer data from 7-Eleven, which was the huge correlation between men late at night buying nappies and buying lager.
Yeah.
Okay. And the theory was, roughly speaking, that you'd been sent out by your wife who had a young baby to buy nappies, and you kind of reasserted your masculinity by buying a 6-pack. Okay. Now, there are, I mean, it's just an interesting question, which is, it is worth asking the question. And sometimes you have tied houses. Sometimes, obviously the terms of the lease are totally different. One thing that's really interesting, which I was talking about to a pub co only this week, was you can get the lease of a pub and often accommodation provided for 5,000 quid up front, okay, and then a share of the beer, a share of the sales.
Yeah.
I think if people under 30 knew that, okay, I think you get a load of people under 30 who go and do it and try it.
Yeah.
And I think that 80% of them would fail horrendously.
Yeah.
But
It's a shame.
but 20% of them. Are young people aware of this? Because it tends to be the retired cop, doesn't it? Who takes on a pub lease.
Or the couple who've retired.
Or the couple who've retired. Or the worst possible case is people who really enjoy being this side of the bar, who assume it'll be just as enjoyable the other side.
I think I'd like to go back to the question about, how you can get more customers in.
Yes.
The one piece of advice that always sticks with me and all my staff and everybody is we get them to watch Simon Sinek's little presentation. I think it's 8 minutes long.
Start with why?
Start with why. And obviously...
He used to work at Ogilvy. I'll give him a bit of a plug
Did
there.
it? I didn't realise that, yeah.
Top thing. And, he goes into the psychology of why you're doing it and thinking really strong about why you're doing it and the why being the centre rather than how and what you're doing. It's all about why. But there's a really interesting segue in there that doesn't get talked about that much, where he has this graph of the people on the very far left being the most influential and the ones who almost decide your popularity. And then you have the early adopters who really get in early and help you out and buy loads. And then you have the sort of, slightly less fanatical.
Yes.
Then you got the ones who don't really care, and then you got the laggards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think he divides it in 6 actually.
Okay.
But I have always thought that bottom left-hand corner are so visible if you think about it, because they give a shit. They care about the pub. They're on Instagram. They'll be in on the first day. They'll introduce themselves as your neighbour. They will say what they do. They'll ask you all about the beer. They will be fanatical about you. And they're the ones who will give you the most influence. And if you look after them particularly and make sure they feel looked after, part of it, comfortable, give them memories, buy them a pint.
They'll
make
bring
sure
in their
they remember
friends.
not just their friends, they'll bring in everybody.
So that's that. It's almost that do things that don't scale, which is that over investing in that bottom corner of that graph.
Yeah.
There's 1,000 true fans.
You
What is
can
it?
tell
Kevin
those
Kelly says
fanatical
1,000 true
people.
fans.
Yeah.
Which you can build a whole business of 1,000 people.
Yeah, and just make sure that they feel brilliant. Obviously, make sure everybody feels brilliant, but we always watch out for those.
Yes.
And they might know about pubs or be in the industry or have spoken about the industry or written a thing or have an Instagram with loads of pints on, for example. You look at people like, from us, people like Topjaw, the Guinness guru, the Schooner scorer, Eating with Todd, Somebody Feed Phil.
You're a Hoffman
all of
fan
those
on
guys.
coffee, James Hoffman.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
By the way, kids, don't watch that. Seriously, take up crack or something. What is it? No, seriously, it'll be cheaper in the long term. Okay, because if you get into James Hoffman videos, and I did it during lockdown, the next thing you know is you're ordering a £2,000 grinder where the burrs are like massaged by Lithuanian nuns or something. And,
I've not seen this one.
The only thing I disagree with him on is the weighing of the bean.
For listeners, who is it?
Okay. Oh, James Hoffman is he was, I think, world barista champion, wasn't he, about a few years ago? And he's one of these absolute coffee influencer gurus on YouTube.
Yep.
And it's incredibly compelling. It's the coffee equivalent of Matt's RV reviews. Have you ever watched that American guy? Matt Fox.
You've got too much time on your hands, but honestly.
This was lockdown. Literally, 4 of us as a family sitting at home. And we must have spent something like 60 hours watching this guy review different American giant motorhomes.
Goodness me.
Anyway, it's absolutely fascinating. I was talking about the power of influencer marketing, which is those people are highly credible because they have reputational skin in the game.
Yeah.
Okay. In other words, this isn't the influencer marketing where you pay someone irrelevant who happens to be famous to talk shit about something.
Yeah.
This is where fundamentally two things, okay, which make it a reliable source of recommendation. One of which is they have skin in the game. Secondly, you know that in amongst their audience are people more expert than you. So this is a wonderful guy called Don Marty, who used to work for Firefox. And he has a model. It's actually, he came and presented it to us once, of advertising, which is, in other words, how you optimize for credibility. Now, if you read a magazine, Woodworkers Monthly, say, one of the things you know is that lots of people reading that magazine know a lot about woodworking.
Yeah.
So the information in that, if it's bullshit, will get called out by people who know more than you. The problem with digital advertising is you don't know who else is seeing it.
Not at all.
You could be the sucker who's been singled out by the Nigerian prince, for all you know. In a mass medium, you know that this is why when we make our wedding vows, we make them in church in front of 200 people who know us simultaneously. We don't do it door to door. Because a promise made in public for all kinds of reasons is more compelling and carries more conviction than a promise made in private, fundamentally. And actually, that's what the digital marketing people haven't fully understood. Because they think it's all about who we reach one at a time.
But there's a very fundamental extra bit that you need to do before you get involved in any of that, and that is be good in the first place. You have to have a really good experience for people coming in order for that marketing to stick at all. So, you know, when someone asks me for advice about running their pub is be there. Make sure your pints are nice. Make sure the place is clean. Watch out for those silent irritants. Make sure that when the guests do come in, and they will, that they have a wonderful time. And if you're not doing that, you might as well not bother. And I think some people aren't.
Do a lot of publicans just are not there? Because I think one they said, I think it was our first pod, mate, that you're like, when you walk into a great pub, you can sort of feel the omnipresence of the owner and the publican.
I think that's true, and that's one of the reasons why I don't want to do another one. Because I can't be in two places at the same time.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think show me a good pub or a good restaurant, and I'll show you a figurehead who runs it and has been there and is that person. I'm looking over at that at the French
By
house.
the way, scope for a mad pub is underexplored. Did you ever go to the Tickell Arms outside Cambridge?
Mad, what do you mean by mad pub?
I don't know about that.
Kim Tickell, flamboyant opera-loving homosexual, okay, who basically ran this. It was an extraordinary pub, which his obituary must have been about 15 years ago, 10 years ago now. But the Tickell Arms, it was. There's a famous thing called Innkeeper's Diary, isn't there, by a guy called Goldsworthy, who took over the Spread Eagle at Tame in the 1930s.
Yeah.
And Tickell had his unbelievable eccentricities, okay? So a friend of mine was there. For example, I always dick around with candle wax, okay? There were candles on the table.
Love it, bud.
And shouting right across the pub was, "Don't play with the candles, this isn't a nunnery," came from Kim Tickell, okay? A friend of mine was there, and he read out a list of car registration numbers and made the owners of those cars go out into the car park and repark so that all the cars were facing the same way. And yet what was bizarre, it was an extraordinary pub. You know, there was always Wagner playing. I mean, completely bonkers.
Yeah.
And actually, I think the potential for that, I think, is underexplored. Just be a
if you
really
were to create
bastard.
the Rory Sutherland pub, what does that look like in your head?
God, it would go bankrupt very quickly. I mean, the administration would be catastrophic. But no, I mean there's a great Orwell thing, the Moon Underwater, isn't it? He writes his piece about what defines the perfect pub. There are a few things we can take issue with, but it's still not bad. It's lovely. It's lovely.
Detail that a bit more.
I have to remember it. It's only a short piece. I think it's just literally. It might have been a journalistic piece.
Yeah, it was a piece for the Times.
The piece for the Times.
Yeah. He spoke about the landlady. He spoke about open heart. He spoke about the place feeling wonderful. But I think the thing I keep thinking about now, and when I say that thing about show me a really great pub and I'll show you a landlord who runs it.
Sure.
You know, you go back and we
Kim Tickell was always there.
Well, we touched on Kevin Moran as well earlier on, and Leslie from the French House as well. And I think it's absolutely key, and that's something that has been kind of partially erased from a lot of pubs because of the fact that they're owned by big firms who just put managers in who don't live there. and only do 40 hours a week, and most of that's paperwork. So, that takes a bit of the soul out of it.
What were your? Because obviously it's kind of easy in retrospect. Like now, the place is already beginning to swell outside. I can hear it. It's a wonderful sound. But what were your doubts going into this?
Oh,
like what were the things? Because it's a fucking huge site.
Because both of you, there was one rule, wasn't it? I'm not going to open a London pub. Was it you or was it Charlie?
No. My rule is I'm not going to open another one.
Got it.
But
Now.
we'd always planned to do it. But I mean, this was a real jump into a dark chasm for me.
Yeah,
right.
Because it hadn't been a pub for 12 years, and obviously we were taking this big step into the dark. Going very retro, very old school. Lots of people in the industry who knew the old Devonshire, which closed in the 2010s, always said it was a dog of a site and never worked. And no one drank this end of Piccadilly, and it would be a disaster. I had literally spent 4 months, every time I closed my eyes, I had a vision of myself behind the bar there on my own and nobody coming in. And it was a recurring dream. It wouldn't go away until I got the bloody thing open. And it got to the stage where when we were a month away from opening, I was just like, fucking get it open for Christ's sake, because I can't sleep and I can't think straight, and all I want to do is pour pints and serve customers, even if there's only a few of them. But for me, it was...
and what was the takeoff like in terms of a graph? Was it a kind of sigmoid curve with the slow at first?
It was a hurricane.
It was a hurricane?
Yeah, it was. It really was like... Do you remember those old videos when Harrods used to do a sale in the 80s, and they'd always have the TV camera inside and they'd open the door and the whole street would rush in.
It was like that.
It was like that. Yeah. So quite the opposite of me standing alone behind the bar happened, which brought another load of complications and problems, but we dealt with it, and it's doing all right. Thank goodness.
Yeah. Because I think when we had lunch, I think Charlie was talking like, I don't know if you purposely did this, but didn't you write a list of like really hard things down? Yeah. That almost would kind of no one else would be able to do.
Yeah. So there were,
because I think that's a really good in terms of getting people in. Yeah. Do things that no one else would bother doing because then you're automatically different.
Well, there were our unique selling points. You can see that picture there. You can see the beer taps are the Czech ones that run at twice the speed of the UK ones, and for us to get them plumbed in was a huge thing. Right. We've spoken about the Guinness. About how we burn the wood for the Ember Grill. About the butchery. We bake all the bread on site. We've had our own
including
steak
soda bread,
knives,
just a bit of a plug.
steak knives, all of those. There was actually 38 unique selling points, and I had a really fraught and anxious conversation with Charlie probably about 2 months before we opened, going, we can't do all of these things. We need to cut this at least by a third. Yeah. And in his charismatic and measured and brilliant way, he just went, no, we're doing all of them. And we did.
What was the hardest couple to get over the line?
The ovens must have been.
The ovens is still quite a thing. I mean, we're burning half a ton of oak a week in the middle of Piccadilly, so getting all the filtration and the cleaning and passing by the council, which we thankfully have, has been a thing. The butchery thing, which is now a big thing because we own the whole sort of chain from when it leaves the abattoir to when it goes to on the plate, and that's 5 to 6 weeks now. Wow. So we have that much stock all the time. The wine list, the amount of wine, the Guinness, the logistics of getting the beer in and out and having it fresh and beautiful. The staffing, all the stuff. But I love it.
Yeah. But I think
none of it's been.
I think the idea of writing down a list of really hard things and running it hard is a great way to create like a massive gap between you and like competition. What's the equivalent of that, Rory, in terms of a client where you've basically wrote a list of things that are like, I suppose it's offspring of reverse benchmarking, but like when you write a list, I don't know, with any client, it could be Coca-Cola, it could be whoever, where you've said, right, this competition are going to struggle to do this.
Differentiation always requires you to do something that's a little bit bonkers, doesn't it? Yeah. In other words, it's the thing you do that you don't have to do that carries the weight of the... This is where finance people are a catastrophe in marketing, you see. because they go, well, the classic example is the DoubleTree Hotel cookies, okay? There is, nobody ever goes to a hotel and goes, I found that hotel experience very disappointing. They didn't give me free warm cookies on check-in, okay? So those are the things that the finance people will always cut. But in the process, what they do is they make everything more and more alike to its competitors. And therefore, the things that you do that aren't actually necessary, the discretionary things, are the things that carry by far the greater part of the weight of communicating what makes you valuable. It's a bit like my 2 cup holders, right? It's not very relevant when you buy a car.
I'm going to say, as we've been talking about silent irritants, I think the cup holders and the cookies might be silent pleasantries.
Yes.
Because they're things that are added in that you don't necessarily tell everyone about, but they elevate your experience.
I mean, famously, I suppose the people who understand that, actually, Skoda copied it amusingly, but Rolls-Royce putting umbrellas in the door handle of the car is the kind of bollocks which is kind of, it's gratuitous, but it's precisely for that reason that it's really interesting.
But again, it goes back to that thing of sensuality and feeling it when it's right, and knowing that it's right, and being pleasantly...
Nice idea. I hope they don't mind me telling you. I'm not going to name the hotel chain, but a very, very upmarket hotel chain, extremely upmarket hotel chain. We just got into a conversation. I was kind of talking about this reverse benchmarking thing. And they suddenly realised that every hotel chain, you get this shitty pair of slippers next to the bed.
Yeah.
And they said, why don't we do it the other way around? Which was, we say, if you would like slippers, please request them. And then when someone does request slippers, which is probably, unless they're Japanese, probably one time in 10, okay, or one time in 15, we'll actually get some embroidered proper slippers with their initials on for them to keep. I won't name the hotel because now everybody who goes there will, can I have 3 pairs of slippers? But the point about that is,
It'll be on my Instagram.
Rather than doing something that everybody expects and they go, meh, there's some slippers.
Yeah.
By the way, one story I tell, which someone somewhere has had a genius idea, which I think has made $500 million for the hotel industry, which never occurred to me before. So I'm booking a hotel, I think it was the Intercontinental Hotel in Houston. And normally when you get to choose a room in a hotel, it's, it's like, it's standard king, double queen, da-da-da-da. It's all about size of room, number of beds. That's it. And this person, whoever the genius was, because it works for every hotel, had just branded some rooms as pool access. Did I tell you this before?
No.
So it was such and such a room, pool access, and such a room, gym access. Now, what they mean is it's just the same as any other room that size, but in one case it's close to the pool, another case it's close to the gym. And I paid $20 a night more for a room that was close to the pool, which normally would have been given out at random to someone who didn't care about whether they're close to the pool or not. Now, the genius of that is that doesn't require you to put up a single picture, doesn't require you to put anything in the minibar. It costs absolutely nothing. Simply by describing something differently, you've created value.
It's brilliant. I've got a great example of that. One of the original Italian restaurants in London was called Terrazzo.
Oh, is that up in Regent's Park?
No, it's on the corner of Romilly Street and Dean Street.
This isn't the Capri Lounge, is it? Not
yes,
that. It is.
It
Go on, tell the
is.
story. Sorry, no. This is brilliant.
So they had this.
Everybody listen to this. So I'm going to break the fourth wall.
Might bring your chair a little bit closer.
Sorry. It's this good a story. So listen in, folks.
So they used to have this kind of dead space downstairs, which was an old function room.
Sorry, just for context, years.
No, it must be the 50s.
It was up near Regent's Park. This is the 50s.
No,
yeah.
I know exactly where it was. It's the corner of Dean Street and Romilly Street. It's currently Mr. Fogg's, and if you pass by, it's still got the.
Oh, it's there, is it?
Yeah,
I see.
Well, it's long gone.
But
it's currently Mr. Fogg's. But if you look, it's got this beautiful mosaic tile with terrazzo outside, so you know which one it was. But obviously Soho, you know what these downstairs rooms are like. It was an old function room. Nobody ever wanted to go down there. So they refurbished it a bit, and they did the tables and chairs, and they put some nice art downstairs, and they lit it nicely, and it still didn't work. So what they did was, every time a reservation came through, they go, so when do you want it for? Oh, it'll be 1 o'clock on Friday. I'm so sorry, but the Capri Lounge is full. You're going to have to sit on the ground floor, I'm afraid. Oh, okay. Well, if a table comes up down there, will you be able to? Maybe, we'll see what we can do. And they would do this to every guest and say, I'm really sorry, but there's no access to the Capri Lounge at the moment. So everybody wanted to know what the Capri Lounge was. And what they did was they funneled all the guests downstairs and they made sure they had a really nice time. So the Capri Lounge just became a thing, and it became the premium place to eat.
Now, a boring person would say, I'm terribly sorry, you'll have to sit in the basement.
Yes.
Right? What they did was they actually rebranded the less desirable space as the more desirable space.
Exactly.
And by implication...
And then it became the most desirable place.
So I actually heard
because
people would ring from Los Angeles and say, I'm arriving in London on Friday.
Yeah.
Is there space in the Capri Lounge?
Yeah, correct.
That's genius.
Genius, isn't it?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
brilliant.
The words, I think, like, listen to a podcast where a guy was saying, in terms of like getting to people recycle more, the words, change the word rubbish bin to landfill bin.
Yeah.
It's like one... I don't know who it
Yeah.
was. I was in a wormhole on YouTube, essentially. But it's like those two little words can change everything.
Amazing.
It's mad. What are some cities that you really love in terms of going for like food adventures? I know we've talked about San Sebastian before.
I've been 3 times since I saw you.
Oh, really?
Incidentally,
Well, okay, actually, maybe a better question.
Do you want
What's
to know about
underrated?
direct flights from London City to San Sebastian?
Correct.
Yes.
That is a sensational place. They are also my fellow... apparently the Basques share their Y chromosome with the Welsh, so I feel particular for
I
that.
swear everyone shares their Y chromosome with the Welsh.
Well, that's because we're so incredibly fertile. No, but actually, in every respect, that place is gorgeous, isn't it?
I adore it. And all the surrounding villages as well in the town.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about like anywhere like underrated then? Would you say like people that are probably not on people's radar? That's really good. It's like really fucking good food.
Do you know what? I've not done a lot of travel since I saw you last. But I you know me. I love northern Italy. Love Tuscany. I love the Veneto, and I love going up into the mountains. You know, around Lake Garda, going up into Alto Adige. Totally underrated place for food, because you have that sort of border between Germanic and Italian happening there. So they've got unbelievable pasta and fantastic meat, gorgeous wine.
Yeah.
Really, really lovely place.
Generalisation, every number 2 place is underrated and every number 1 place is overrated.
Go on, tell me more.
Well, what tends to happen is that fame tends to confer itself in a kind of winner-takes-all effect, okay?
Yeah.
Which is what you might call Solcombe, okay, right?
We're in Devon.
In Devon,
Yeah.
okay? Which is actually too popular for its own good, okay?
Correct. And I'm worried about San Sebastian, but that's
Well,
another
that's an
story.
interesting point, which is fortunately the airport isn't big enough. That's why London City flies to San Sebastian, because it can take internal flights from Madrid and Barcelona, and it can take the little planes from London City. But you can't. No one. Basically, Ryanair won't be able to fly there. I think you can't land You can land an Embraer 190. Sorry, this is not an aviation podcast.
We were talking about roads
By
last
the way,
time.
the
we went on for
Embraer
half an hour.
190 is the most underrated, gorgeous plane, lovely plane. Sorry, anyway. Anyway, it's like a private jet, but for ordinary flights. No, I mean, San Sebastian luckily has a bit of a moat to prevent it becoming
'cause
ruined.
it's hard to get to.
Because it's hard to get to.
Yeah.
You fly to Bilbao and drive will be the only other way, I guess. But generally, the number 1 place is too popular, is unjustly popular, and therefore the number 2, the number 3, the number 4, it's a rule of markets. It's a Dirichlet distribution. If you want to get really nerdy, it happens in brands. In other words, the brand leader always enjoys both an unfair advantage for 2 reasons. When I say unfair, what's unfair? And the reason is, let's get it right, which is it's a part of more people's repertoire. And the people who have it in their repertoire buy it more frequently within their repertoire. So you get a combinatorial effect where, for example, this is why people go to Umbria rather than Tuscany, or they go to the Lot rather than the Dordogne, which is that the place that's most famous is probably, maybe it's 5% better than the second best place. Although you might argue when it gets really, really crowded, it's now 15% worse.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you want to buy a house in Solcombe, forget it. Right? So the trick is often to go and find a number 3, number 4. I'd often say, actually, for example, if you want to go to an American city, you've got to choose the time of year, right? Go to Chicago.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Chicago.
You'd agree with that, okay?
Totally.
Why Chicago? But
Everybody would go. Orlando, New York, LA, right? Standard places, Florida, everybody goes there. And actually, Chicago is the best best big city in America.
Yeah.
because
Well, first of all, it's an American city.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a really, really American Midwest. By the way, the food scene is fantastic.
Absolutely
incredible.
brilliant, yeah,
Right?
really, really great. You've got barbecue, you've got all of the Midwest coming in, you've got posh restaurants, you've got Michelin star, You've got unbelievable burgers. You've got like really great bars. It's a great day.
It's a fantastic
When
day.
people just, I suppose people go pick New York.
And also, there aren't that many tourists. So I always say there's a kind of you're staying in the right place if you're at the hotel breakfast, and at least half of the people having breakfast aren't tourists. Yeah. Okay, they're there for some other reason.
Yeah.
When a place becomes entirely about tourism, you kind of lose something.
You lose all the
fundamentally,
authenticity.
Yeah, all the authenticity is gone. And this is why Airbnb, which is, I mean, this is one of the things I'm really conflicted about, okay? Airbnb, if you're a Welsh farmer and you convert a stable which no one would live in and you convert it into a holiday let, Airbnb is an absolute joy. If you're trying to live in Barcelona, it's a living nightmare because it's more profitable to Airbnb a 2-bedroom apartment for 14 weekends of the year than it is to have a local living in it for 365 days.
Which is wrong.
And, fundamentally, that you get these effects. And the winner takes all effects absolutely beset tourism. Actually, tourism's kind of stupid because an awful lot of tourism is people going somewhere far away for bragging rights. That's actually less interesting than something nearby. I'll give you an example of this, okay? I used to do this with an audience of 500 people. I go, okay, how many people here have been to Machu Picchu? And you get about 10, 15, or if it's Gen Z, it's everybody puts out their hands because it's their gap year. And then you go, how many of you have been to Lincoln Cathedral? Right? And you get half, and 2 of them will be people who either went to university in Lincoln or grew up there.
Yeah.
And I go, no, objectively speaking, right, Lincoln Cathedral is every bit as interesting as Machu Picchu. And there's a fucking castle next door with an original copy of Magna Carta or something, right? And you can get there in a day on the train for like 23 quid. You don't get altitude sickness, but it doesn't have many bragging rights. And so an awful lot of tourism is kind of bollocks because people go there to say they've been there.
We talk about this a lot, but when you say your favourite restaurant, if you ask someone their favourite restaurant, you'll always say the one that gives you the most status. No, we've talked about that. As in, like, you'll always say like a 3-star that you've been to once versus your actual.
No, because your favourite restaurant is really the one you go to most frequently.
Exactly,
Yeah. Well, what was it? A. Gill said it's the one at the end of your street where the waiter knows your name.
There's your name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A few more things, then we'll wrap this up. But I'm loving this. One thing I think we've talked about when we had lunch was I think it's just interesting to talk about is the difference between real stories and true stories. I absolutely love that. Yeah. And I think we talked about like the way, especially the Irish and sort of the Welsh, you're conversing to show how good you are at conversing.
Is there such thing as a really good story that doesn't have an element of some kind of exaggeration or an untruth?
Yes.
Or a embellishment or a change in the timing or the tone or the characters? Is there any such thing? I actually think no. I think stories by their nature are things that are more important to be entertaining than to be true. And they need to be real and they need to have a hook.
Well, they need to have an element of
think
truth.
Something. Well,
They need to be
even
rooted.
still.
Yeah.
What would you say the marketing equivalent of that is, Raw?
Oh, well, David Ogilvy, famously, he wrote a story in one of his books, autobiographies, and someone went along and basically had a little bit of a quibble with the veracity. Yeah. And David Ogilvy said, I know, but it's a good story, so shut up.
Yeah, exactly.
Effectively, the way I always describe it is stories are the PDF files for the human mind. They're the format in which we retain and share information.
That's Will Storr's thing.
And therefore, just as you have to get something into PDF format, for purposes of sharing a document that you need to sign, you've got to get something into story format in order for it to become both memorable and storable. In a way,
useful.
Statistics are not memorable, stories are, very simply.
Yeah.
If you went to the pub and someone started reeling out data or showing you graphs, you wouldn't stay around very long. Whereas stories are entertaining, rewarding, shareable, memorable, all those qualities. And it's a format. It's like a cognitive format. I think that's the way to look at it.
Well, Will Storr says we're the Homo nagans. He says
Homo narrans, is it?
Homo nagans or like we're the storytelling being.
Yeah.
So we only as you say.
Isn't he a great guy? By the way?
He's been on the podcast. Fucking best.
Brilliant.
Best episodes I've ever done. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah.
He's super smart. What in terms of
The Status Game, by the way, is fantastic. If you haven't read that,
I haven't.
Will Storr's book, The Status Game, I love it.
That's really good. How do you deal with like? do you know we talk about trends and fads? Like this place is like rocketing. What keeps you up at night about keeping like not relevant, but like keeping this thing moving for? Like, how do you think about that? Because I think because you know what you were saying about Rory about number one and number two. Like there's a pressure of being the busiest, the best. Like what?
I don't know. I mean, there's a couple of things I want to say. One is that we're not trendy. I don't follow trends. I don't do things that people say I should do. I do things that I think are timeless. You know, like selling pints and doing Scotch eggs.
By the way, that's a virtue of London over New York. I find the New York eating scene ridiculously faddish.
Yeah.
And I remember someone said, "Where are you going this evening?" And they said, "That's so last year." And I kind of went, you know, as a London, I kind of go, is it any good or not?
I find that implicitly so annoying.
Yes.
And you know, we just...
What the fuck are you talking about? It's so last year.
Well, that's the first thing. And the second thing is that we need to continue to be good. And in order to continue to be good, we look at our why, which is we're here to make sure people feel comfortable, safe, happy, welcome, well looked after. And if we look at that top line all the time in everything, then we know that we are doing okay. And where we can find marginal gains, little places where we can do things slightly better all the time, always looking at those, then I think we'll be okay. Touch wood.
Interesting. Rory, what would you say in terms of like that why piece with the Simon? Because have you met Simon Sinek?
No, weirdly not. No, I should have done, but no. He was at Ogilvy, New York, probably at the same time as I was in London, but I never met him then. But by the way, some of what he did got then taken on by people with this whole idea of purpose, which got a bit excessive. But the fundamental point of start with why is actually, it's a very, very good kind of North Star.
I think it's very powerful.
I think it's a powerful idea and very, very useful. And actually, by the way, consumers can tell. That's why it really matters.
What do you mean by
that? Well, fundamentally, there's a lovely story by John Kay, you know, the FT writer, where he goes out to a restaurant with a friend, and they've loved this restaurant for quite a few years. And he goes, you know, something's changed here. It's like, feels like it's been taken over by private equity, you see. And they go and Google it, and sure enough, it has.
Isn't that amazing?
And, you know, there's something about the portions. They actually felt it.
Yeah, there you go.
You see? And suddenly the motivation has gone from being... And by the way, the shareholder value movement has been a catastrophe in business. The only healthy thing in business is a customer value movement, which is why family-owned businesses disproportionately better, live longer, have better brands than PLCs.
It isn't in Germany. It's way more common to have a family business than it is.
Actually, the car industry, I mean... Although they are public companies, you'll even find, I mean, you know, Adidas, Aldi, Puma, quite a lot of German businesses are driven by, do you know this, basically sibling rivalry. Yeah. So you have Grohe and Hans Grohe are two separate tap companies where the brothers fell out. Puma and Adidas are in the same town, but the brothers fell out, And the car industry, I can't remember, it's all these people called Pinchit-Rieder who sort of own BMW, and then one of them is the stepfather of Ferry Porsche. But the family thing, and I was in Texas, HEB, all these places, Buc-ee's, they're family-owned businesses. And if you're a family-owned business, you have a huge advantage over a PLC because, one, you work to multiple time horizons.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, in other words, rather than being obsessed with the next quarter or the next year's figures, you're actually thinking both 6 months ahead and 6 years ahead. Yeah. You're on the premises, okay, in a sense. You have long-term reputational skin in the game because it's your name above the door, and you're thinking of the futurity and posterity.
And also, your customers are coming before the shareholders.
Before the shareholders, you see? So you haven't got any shareholders. So what happens when you haven't got any shareholders? You focus on your customers. Absolutely. The great thing about your customers live in the real world with all the messiness that entails, all right? Whereas the shareholders are basically judging you by a load of artificial numerical metrics which don't really capture the value of the business at all. They're just there to justify their own investment decisions to someone else. And consequently, therefore, that I think, a very interesting fact, out of the 5 IPA gold winners for advertising effectiveness last year, 4 of them were family-owned businesses. Specsavers, Yorkshire Tea, Laithwaite's.
Timpson's.
And, well, Timpson's is sort of family-owned. I think you're right, actually.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
What was the 4th one?
Their customer service.
And McCain, the oven chip people. They're Canadian family, right?
Really?
Well, the other one I wanted to mention was Richer Sounds, of course.
Oh, Julian
Yeah,
Richer.
brilliant.
Yeah, fantastic.
What's
That,
Richer Sounds.
I don't know that is.
there's a book,
Oh, you-
The Richer Way,
He's
right?
such a legend.
Wait, but as Matt, yeah.
Oh, God.
Dumb question,
Okay,
isn't it?
so there's a book called The Richer Sounds, The Richer Way by Julian Richer, who founded Richer Sounds. By the way,
Highest retail pounds per square foot in the
Oh,
world.
is that they sell up TVs? And,
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
and by the way, one of the things I
Why is he
absolutely
such a
love, which
legend?
everybody can learn from, is he went and bought, it was nothing amazingly expensive. It was like a Rolls-Royce Shadow 2. This is about 15, 20 years ago, okay? And the best performing store in any given couple of weeks, the people who worked at the store got the Rolls-Royce for a couple of weeks.
yeah.
Unbelievably inexpensive incentive program.
Yeah.
I mean, but back in the day, you could buy a Rolls-Royce Shadow 2 for, it was like
So
20
this is
grand.
this
or
rich,
something,
richer.
right? Yeah.
Julian.
Julian,
But
yeah.
you're some kids working. Okay. You're some kids in Barnsley working in a hi-fi store, and for 2 weeks you're cruising around in a Rolls Royce. Then basically you're the most successful person in your school, right? Because you got the roller.
They gave him status.
Really, really clever stuff.
brilliant.
That's what he would do.
But he also had a system which is, by the way, any person working at Richer Sounds got paid a £5 if you sent in a suggestion. Now, he said, oh, obviously there's the risk that people who are just short of money will just send in bollocks. And he said there was about 3% of it was bollocks suggestions just to make a £5. But he paid a £5 regardless. That was so he had a whole-
Fiverr back then. That was like.
but the Richer Way it's called, and
it's really-
it's a really super. Now I'll tell you why,
Lovely
because
guy, by the way.
Really? Yeah.
back in about 1998 or something, I went to a WPP event where he came as a guest speaker. Complete epiphany. He gave a talk there, and it was one of those sort of 3 or 4 moments in my life where I go, hold on, I'd never thought about it like this before.
Yeah.
This is the other one was a guy.
What was like the?
Seymour from Seymour Powell, the design company. Have you ever come across him?
No,
Just when you go back to Richer, so the what was the epiphany from that talk?
Well, it was just his approach to business was basically it was customer focused and employee focused entirely, right? But it was very healthily employee focused. Now he had let's be fair. One advantage he had is it's not difficult to find, particularly then, to find young guys who are obsessed with hi-fi. But you would get a level of knowledge in the staff there, which was way above that which you'd find in a standard electrical retailer. So it was basically it was medium to high end hi-fi TVs equipment, very very competitively priced in tiny stores,
tiny,
genuinely tiny stores.
What was the value of that being in a small store? Or was that
Well,
just
low
just
rent?
Low rent.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but he used to have warehouse and just bring it in.
You'd bring it in as Is it Argos?
And he always had
effectively?
stock.
Yeah,
Yeah, because the other one is that Zap business. You know those speedy deliveries.
Yeah.
So they basically it was so competitive, and they put all their warehouses next, basically like in Knightsbridge, Chelsea, and then the minimum basket spend has to be over 50 quid. They basically have bottles of Dom Perignon. You'll be able to get like really expensive things, but you'll get 1 or 2 rich people who are basically on a sesh. Will get 2 or 3 bottles of champagne, and it covers the rest of the average spend brings up by that. Like it's almost like that die-hard fans, yeah. And they've positioned it as like really premium.
That's, by the way, a shrewd approach to pricing, which is EasyJet very quickly discovered. It's almost like barbell pricing, okay? EasyJet has quite premium coffee, quite premium sandwiches, quite premium food. And the reason is there are people who are really price sensitive on EasyJet who aren't going to order anything. And then there are people who think, wow, I've saved 100 quid by going on EasyJet. Let's go large.
Yeah,
so they
that's
realise there's no point in trying to go for the middle. Okay, and so McDonald's actually and KFC practice barbell pricing, they call it, don't they? Which is basically there are people who are focused on price and there are people who aren't. Don't worry about the middle because something's either a bargain or it's a treat. There's no word for something that's in between a bargain or a treat.
There's also something slightly disappointing about that as well.
Yeah, because it's neither one thing nor the other.
Exactly.
You see.
I suppose that's what you guys have done with like the sausage on the stick, the Beck's beer.
Yeah.
Then you can equally go upstairs and spend an absolute fortune.
Absolutely, and it happens all the time.
Yeah.
I'm under pressure for time.
Yeah, I'm literally about to wrap
This
it
has
up.
been absolutely
Yeah,
delightful.
we could go on
And
for
thank
ages.
you for giving me the chapter and verse about the Capri Lounge, because I've been trying to track that down for ages.
I'll send you the address.
Oh, fantastic. I'll
5-minute
go there.
walk.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Lads, thank you so much. As always, absolute
Pleasure. What a joy.
There's three of us. That we've gone,
Absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely, really, really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that went.
Sorry about the voice, by the way.
I know.